Sort of Coming Chapter 953. Qingming World, Xuandu View. In the peach blossom forest, an old Taoist chief and a handsome young man wearing a tiger head hat walked side by side, followed by a fat man, looking around to see if there were peach branches on the ground to pick up. The Yuanyu Jinxiu who came from the Great Wall of Jianqi respectively settled in the Baiyujing Shenshao city under the Qingming World, Sui Chu Gong, and Xian Duguan. Xian Duguan was only assigned to this wealthy fat man, but the young Jianxiu had a close relationship with the old Guanju, and of course it might be a coincidence. Anyway, Yanzhua secretly used the pretense of being an old master over the years and did a lot of business. With such a behemoth as Xuantuguan, the vassal hilltops can't be counted with both hands, plus the dozens of dynasties and vassal kingdoms attached to Xuantuguan. Even if only the Xuanduguan line itself, there are nearly 100,000 Taoists under its jurisdiction. Lots of people. The old view master just opens one eye and closes one eye. Anyway, those money exchanges are all fertile and not flowing into outsiders' fields. If Fatty Yen can get money from Baiyujing, it will be no problem to give him a plaque with a golden inscription. Even the old master can make Lu Lao San's inscription inscribed. The old Guanju pondered for a long time, and finally opened the skylight to speak brightly. Bai Yi, are you willing to serve as the abbot of Xuandu Guan in the future? Bai Yi didn't seem to be surprised, shook his head, and said straightforwardly, impossible. Old Guanju nodded, knowing that this is the answer. I just can't help but ask more, just in case. The old master was silent for a moment, and then asked, the master is unwilling to be a master. A lot of secular and general affairs are more troublesome than being a master, and it is impossible. So what about being a master? The master of a Taoist temple can be fictitious and real. If you are willing to take care of things, you can take care of everything, no matter how big or small, you can grasp everything. If you don't want to control it, it's just a false title. You can give it to the Taoist Supervisory Institute, and the seat is known as the pillar of the Taoist temple and the model of the Taoist people. Can be competent, with this example of the jungle, the eyes of man and the sky. It is a bit similar to the Haoran Tianxia Mountain School. One person concurrently serves as the chief priest and guest. Bai also shook his head, I really don't want to be distracted. Lao Guanju sighed, let you be a deacon, even if you are willing to do it in vain. I don't have the shame to show you the jokes for Qingming. In the larger Taoist temples, in addition to the 8 deacons, there are 3 capitals, 5 masters and 18 heads. Yanzhua found that the atmosphere was a bit boring, so he proposed to himself, I think the subject is always the subject, and the subject is sitting here or something. If you don't dislike it, the younger generation. Old Guanju nodded and answered, dislike it. Yanzhua didn't lose his mind. How could he dare to expect to be the master of any Xuandu temple, but he started to do small calculations a few years ago, and felt that with his deep friendship with the old master, he had to think about that. The post of the head of Shifang Yunshuatang is responsible for arranging Taoist priests from all walks of life. Although there is not a lot of oil and water, Yanzhua has his own means to open up the fortune. Of course, it is not the kind of partial wealth. The old Guanju suddenly said, Fatty Yen, when you reach the Jade Realm one day, the poor Dao will find an opportunity to open a meeting in the Patriarch's Hall, and I would like to mention that you are recommended to be the deacon of the accountant, but said in advance well, the poor Dao doesn't care for a long time, and the prestige in the Taoist temple is not enough. It may not be successful. You have heard that today, don't be too focused. It is the best to be successful. Yanzhua rubbed his hands and smiled, I understand, I can talk and talk. The accountant deacon, one of the 8 great deacons, with the huge scale and solid background of the Xiandu temple, is almost equivalent to the Shang Shu of the Hebud dynasty under the mountain. The old Guanju turned his head and looked at one place, and then left. Bai also wanted to say but stopped. The old Guanju smiled knowingly. If there is a chance, replant peach blossoms. Lao Guan focused on the mountains and rivers, and stepped to another place in Taolin, beside the stream, standing a crown of white hair with a girlish face. The master of Lao Guan hit the inspector, and said in a deep voice, "Senior sister." The girl just nodded her head and looked up at the sky. Xuantu Guan has always declared that she is a retreat. In fact, I was wandering around outside, and now my merits are full. Only then did he return to Xuandu Temple. When waiting for the sky, just waiting for rain. It is not only a far-reaching plan to prepare for a rainy day, but also a rather helpless last resort. So when he appeared this time, he didn't show up with Xiao's son anymore. The girl retracted her gaze, looked down at the stream, and murmured, "The peach blossoms are flowing away." This sentence comes from Bai Ye's answer to the layman's question in the mountain. Her name is Wang's Sun, and her Taoist title is Empty Mountain. She was once recognized as the most qualified Taoist official in the history of Xiandu Temple. It can even be said that several juniors were raised by her. Among them is the present Master Sun Huaizhong. The chief heard that it was praise from the outside world. Incapable of achieving nothing, it is her evaluation of herself. In addition to the palace and the crane tower, the river is rolling eastward, and there is a mainstay. It is one of the few Shilong stones in the world. There are many buildings and many cliff carvings. Old Yuan Ingjian Xiu Qingquan, at this moment, was standing on the edge of the cliff with a deceased person watching the water, but the heights of the two sides were very different, and there was a child with immature face standing beside old Jianxiu, but he looked old-fashioned. It is Nalan Burning Reed, one of the 10 sword immortals on the peak of the Great Wall of Sword Qi. It was a little bit later than Qin Shi in Feixingcheng. Just because Sui Qugong was so polite, he prospered and moved the crowd, and found him an ascendant monk's fairy, but it was a rare relic left over from the dissolution of a sword repair soldier. Standing on the tall buildings by the river, a young Taoist official standing on a railing, covered with books, looked across the river in a daze, a river that looked like a moat. One side is like ants, while the other side is very few. Because in the eyes of this person, it is as if this river is used as the boundary. Nalan Xiaowei glanced at the young Taoist official over the Guanchua Tower, who looked like a scholar, and said casually, "Sai Qugong monk either is in retreat, or he is preparing for retreat. Why do you often see this guy walking upstairs and wandering around?" Qing Quan said, "His name is Gao Ping. He has 2 Taoist names, Tai Heng and Zhou Gu. For promotion, he has been responsible for all the records of Taoist priests in Gongguan and the delivery of the official documents." However, in addition to the status of Xing'er Baiying, Gao Ping seems to have an official position, literature, anyway. I have never heard of anything. If the hidden officer is here, he must know the twists and turns of the doorway here. Nalan Xiaowei nodded and said, "It's an old official position in Howran world. It has been a long time, and the official hat is very small, but I don't have any knowledge. I definitely can't become this official. Now I don't use it." Qing Quan looked at Nalan Burning Reed with a look of surprise. Nalan Xiaowei laughed and cursed, "What kind of eyes? I know the origin of literature, what's so strange, it seems to find that the kid Chen Pingon doesn't understand." Qing Quan smiled and said, "If you say that you are better than swordsmanship, you are temporarily better than the hermit, I think, but if you want to compare the ink in your stomach, it is really incomparable. You are just a coincidence." Nalan Xiaowei broke the subject, "Have you ever dealt with him?" Qing Quan nodded and said, "I've met several times in the building and by the river. I'm a boring gourd. I haven't talked much about him. There are some rumors about Sui Chu Gong. I can only chat with that nickname Xiao Bai. I seem to like it." When playing chess, Palace Master Wu will occasionally participate in it, but there is a weird rule that both sides only play the first 40 moves. Nalan Xiaowei nodded and said, I also often talked with Sun Juyuan and the others, winning more and losing less. Qing Quan asked, do you really know how many lines are on the board? Nalan Xiaowei smiled and said, you just owe it. Qing Quan smiled and said, follow the move. Nalan Xiaowei ignored the top 3 masters of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and just looked at the young-looking Taoist official, and had a chance to play with him for a few games. At the Guanchua Tower, Gao Ping said with a heartfelt smile, when Nalan Sword Immortal is free one day, I can come here as a guest. I want to replay the final battle with Nalan Sword Immortal on the Great Wall of Sword Qi together. Nalan Xiaowei smiled and said, I don't understand those who are silly, you have found the wrong person, you have to talk to the young man in the Summer Palace to talk about this. Gao Ping smiled and said, Sword Immortal Nalan has humbled himself. It's just a conversation on paper. Nalan burned the reeds without comment. After the salute, Chief Gao Ping turned and walked into the crane tower. After closing the door, the head official's sight was a picture of the situation in Zhuzhou, and there were slight changes almost every year. In the future, the palace owner asked by Yujing, the palace owner Wu Shuangjiang himself, perhaps only half of it. The other half is the world of Kyushu included in this picture. Snowflakes are as big as palms in the wind and snow. A barefooted monk in purple clothes walked alone on the border between the 2 states and walked alone on the border between the 2 states. He came to a land of poor mountains and bad waters where the spiritual energy was almost infinite, and he looked out at a cliff. There are tall people in the mountains. 90-generation monk sits in deep valley in danger. Forever, the high wind will not fall. Jiang Xiu, who is leaving Yuxiang Yaoqing and leaving the Qingshan dynasty, wants to come here to listen to the others' opinions. After getting the ambiguous answer, Jiang Xiu just laughed it off and continued to travel far away. Quietly entered the boundary of Yuzhou. In Zhulu County, which is said to be the site of an ancient battlefield, there is a Qianhe bridge in a place called Jiaming. A village woman walked out of a Tongtuo lane and crossed the bridge with a load. A bamboo basket was carried at each end of the load, and 2 children were sitting in the basket. Jiang Xiu smiled and said, this is picking up the 2 ancestors. In the remote area of Yuzhou, there is a small Taoist temple named Zuxiguan. On the street that is not wide outside, a book stand was set up at the corner of the street. There are not only novels, but also comic books and comics. You can only rent but not sell, and you can read a book for a coin. On the high and low benches, there were some juveniles wearing open pants, and there were also a few idle young rascals, who were chatting while flipping through the books. The stall owner is a fair-faced young Taoist priest with thick eyebrows and big eyes. Jushu Temple is a small Taoist temple in the small county town. Although the sparrow is small and has all 5 internal organs, Mao Zue is a classic creation of that small Taoist temple, that is, it is in charge of food. But anyhow, he is a Taoist official who cleans up inflows. Walking on the road, being called by someone, can have a master suffix. And his master is also a Taoist scholar of Taoism, second only to Guanzhou and the supervisory court, the 3rd place. The young Taoist officials set up a book stand here, but in fact they can't make a lot of money. When they were young, they were mountain runners. It stands to reason that he is a Taoist official, and his appearance is not bad, so he shouldn't be a bachelor. But the problem is that neighbors in the neighborhood say that this surnamed Master Mao is a bit confused. I often froze in a daze, or when I was eating, my face would burst into tears all at once, but the problem was that there was no cry. Over time, no one dared to propose a marriage. Otherwise, the Taoist master who has a degree, which is not sweet and delicious. There was a saucepan wrapped in oil paper on Mao Zhu's palm, with 7 or 8 garlic cloves in it, and he was chewing slowly. A young Taoist priest came on the street. He was wearing a Hunyuan scarf with a hard-brimmed round hat, showing his hair bun, and ran across it with a boxwood hairpin. The outgoing Taoist stopped, looked up at the plaque of the small Taoist temple, smiled and said, "It's a good one to make up for the deficiency. Only by holding the way of surplus and damaging it can you avoid the regret of Konglong and the sorrow of the universe." The young Taoist turned his head and smiled and looked at that Mao Zhu. A big state, a small country, a big county and a small county, a small Taoist temple, but a big monk. Not, but there is, but it is. Because the Taoist audience, and the Taoist temple itself, were transformed by this Taoist priest. Mao Zhu turned his head and looked at that person and sighed, "It's closed." The children immediately became unhappy, and Mao Zhu had to say, "Next time everyone reads 3 books, no money will be charged." There is nothing next time anyway. The children broke up in joy. As for the young men and women, they didn't care about anything. They stubbornly made a few curses and left. The main reason was that the foreign Taoist priest did not seem to be a good stubble. The young Taoist said with a smile, "It took a lot of effort for the boss to find here. No wonder Master Lu couldn't find you." Mao Zhu said, "It's not that he can't find me, but he doesn't need to find me for the time being." The young Taoist said with a smile, "Anyway, it is the first step for the poor. The Qingshan dynasty can't protect you. Yao Qing has too many concerns, and his realm is a little too close, so he said hello to Pindao. The poor Earth Lung Mountain, as soon as the big formation opens, you will go to Huayang Palace's old ancestor cave to hide, protect you for 100 years, it is not a big problem. Anyway, all the expenses of opening the mountain gate, the poor way can be Qingshan dynasty reimbursement." Mao Zhu sneered, "Don't you worry about the next moment, he will be right in front of you. First, the skills of the poor way of formation, and the means of covering the secrets of heaven, are not too bad." The young Taoist priest walked over to the stall, picked a bench to sit down, and smiled. "Furthermore, it's obvious that those who don't deal with Bai Yujing already have Xian Du Temple and Sui Chu Gong, and there is one more Earth Long Mountain. It's nothing, it's really invincible. A certain country in Yuzhou whose national strength does not lose to the Qingshan dynasty of Bingzhou, among which the Hongnong Yang family has been the backbone of the temple since ancient times. The Yang family has always been the biggest pilgrim in Huayang Palace. Not only the money for incense, but also the many Taoist officials in Daifishan came from the Hongnong Yang family. As long as it falls into the hands of Bai Yujing, who is within 100 years, he will be punished or not, and he will be punished severely. These are actually nothing, anyway, everyone knows, Yudo never deliberately targeted anyone, just discussed the matter. The problem lies in this Dao's second child. Every time the person who violates the prohibition is accounted, he will kill or punished heavily. In addition to the matter, he will also be investigated for, teachers are not strict, the teacher's fault, and the whole mountainhead is bowed. This is nothing. There was once a young man in Shan who was deprived of the Taoist priest from the world and could not be employed as a Taoist official forever. He was not convinced, not for himself, but for the master and Shan Tao, and insisted on asking for an argument and justice with his second son. And this person was not only born in the Hongnong Yang family, but also the youngest disciple of this young Taoist priest. As a result, there was an uproar. The former Taoist official surnamed Yang not only adds to the crime, but also affects the family's father's fault if the son does not teach. Back then, a respected old Taoist priest, one of the 10 people in the Qingming world, stood on the border of Bai Yujing that time, looking at the 12th floor of the 5 cities of Bai Yujing from a distance. And he is the ancestor of Daifishan Huayang Palace, Gao Gu, and his Taoist name is Juyue. It is recognized as the #1 alchemy person in the world. Mao Zhu shook his head and said, "You still look down on that person too much." Gao Gu smiled and said, "Why don't you put it another way? Is Gao Gu overestimating himself? Mao Kong twitched at the corner of his mouth. This joke sounds good. Chunyang Taoist fellow once said that a golden pill was in my belly, and I knew that I could not help it. Gao Gu said, my generation is fortunate to be born as a human, but can also climb the mountain and cultivate the path. What we ask for is to break the sky, but the fundamentals are just to maintain humanity. As for you, the real man of bones, after all, unlike the walking dead, you are seeking humanity. Prove the Tao's self. Fellow Taoists, think so. Mao Zhu was silent for a moment and said, wait until I finish eating the sauce and garlic cloves. A logging yard was newly set up in Yuzhang County of Dali Hongzhou. And Yuzhou, which is connected to Hongzhou, had set up a weaving bureau before that, which was in charge of supervising the weaving of textiles needed for royal and official use within a prefecture. The first chief official was a young official named Li Baozhen, who was born on the battlefield and had wushuan. But even the provincial governor is not qualified to look through the files of this person. When Li Zhizao took office, he brought only 2 personal servants, serving as the assistant officials of the weaving bureau, both of whom were surnamed Zhu. According to local chronicles, the land boundary of Dayu Yuzhou often has loud noises and thunderous noises around noon in the middle of the day, hence the name Yuzhou. In the middle of the night, the weaving officer Li Baozhen took 2 deputy officials to visit the Yuzhang County logging yard. The group of 3 saw Lin Jingqing, and Li Baozhen held the ceremony for the younger generation, and said, Uncle Lin, my nephew took the liberty to visit. Lin Jingqing, who was sitting watch by the stove in the study, just nodded in greeting. Seeing that Li Baozhen seemed to intend to continue talking while standing, Lin Jingqing fiddled with the charcoal a few times with the tongs and pressed it a few times, indicating that the 3 visitors would stop standing. All right. In fact, as the 2 parties, it is impossible to talk about official affairs. The newly established Yuzhou Weaving Bureau and Hongzhou Logging Institute, similar to the earliest Longquan County Kiln Affairs Supervision Bureau, belong to a kind of sinking of the Dai court. Institutions, government offices are secretly documented, and go directly to Tianting. If the 2 chief officials come into contact with each other privately, plotting something is a big taboo in officialdom. But the general human relationship, it's not necessary to be too deliberately alienated. As for the yardstick during this period, it depends on the practice of the respective public practice. Just like this meeting tonight, both Lin Jingqing and Li Baozhen will take the initiative to record the files, and even if they deliberately conceal it, we've the bureau or it is the logging house, and there will definitely be some officials who will let His Majesty the Emperor know about this. According to Dallas New Code, the rank of Yuzhou Weaving Bureau is much higher than that of Yuzhang Jun's Logging Institute. As the chief weaving officer, Li Baozhen's official title is from the 4th rank, plus some concealed ones. The authority to say that Li Zhizao is a half-ranked official is not an exaggeration. The 4 people were sitting around the stove, with an iron net sandwiched on the brazier, roasting some golden rice cakes and tofu cubes, probably even if it was a midnight snack. The father and daughter surnamed Zhu have long since left their bases. They followed their son Li Baozhen and wandered outside for more than 20 years. After being polished by public practice, they fought on the battlefields with no swords, lights and swords. Now Zhu He and his daughter Zhu Lu are separated. It is a golden-bodied martial artist and a 6-world martial artist, the latter just broke the border at the beginning of this year. Old Wufu, nearly 60th birthday, slightly frost on temples. Lin Jingqing turned his head and looked at the old man, and said with a smile, Zhu He, we haven't seen each other for many years. Zhu He smiled and nodded and said, it's been 20 years since we last met. Lin Jingqing was one of the first locals who left Lizhu Cave and moved to the capital. Although Zhu He was the nursing home of the Li family on Fulu Street and was a family-born child, in the early days in the small town, Lin Jingqing was the assistant officer of the superintendent's office. He often accompanied the superintendent to inspect the kiln entrance, and the Li family owned his own. In the long kiln, Zhu He is taking care of specific affairs, so the two parties often meet and are not unfamiliar. Lin Zhengqing turned his head and asked, "Zhu Lu, have you ever been married?" The woman was a little cautious and shook her head gently. "I haven't married yet." Lin Zhengqing nodded and said, "Knowing that you were a kid makes you happy." Zhu Lu looked straightforward. Li Baozhen actually envied the father and daughter. They were able to tell Lin Zhengqing a few words. Unlike himself, he came to this logging yard today just to visit the mountain. Regarding Lin Zhengqing, a hidden official of the old supervision bureau, Li Baozhen knew the approximate depth of the water after only one pass. Just like the upright third-rank Yuzhou provincial governor, he couldn't access the files of a fourth-rank weaving officer in his own territory. This is Li Baozhen's confidence. As the chief officer in charge of the entire southeast espionage of Aquarius in the past, Li Baozhen has come into contact with many secret files of Dallas espionage. When he took office, Li Baozhen smelled a very hidden and unusual, and even produced a certain inference that made Li Baozhen feel a chill in his back. This unsmiling Uncle Lin in his childhood memory may be the national teacher Cui Yunan in Lizhu. A key chess piece in Dongtian, and this seemingly inconspicuous chess piece, is very likely to affect the trend of the entire Dali court to a certain extent. This is an official intuition of Li Baozhen. Lin Zhengqing glanced at Li Zhizao, who was sitting in distress. He was not young anymore. In his years of no doubt, he was a fourth-rank official. If he put aside his identity as the confidant of the emperor, in fact, in the two temples of Dali capital and the companion capital, the Bureau of Weaving belonged to the Dali imperial court. The ad hoc institutions belonged to the cold bench sects that drifted away from the borders of officialdom. Therefore, unlike the disciples of the Shangzhou state surnames like Chao Gingxin and Yuan Jingding, they are too eye-catching, but some people do seem to be born into officialdom. In addition, the only one involved in the officialdom of the Li family in Fulu Street, which has a profound heritage, is Li Baozhen. Lin Zhengqing flicked the charcoal fire lightly with the tongs, covered in the dust, and said calmly, "A person using wisdom is to burn charcoal for warmth. You must learn to keep a low profile to keep it burning for a long time." Li Baozhen nodded and smiled. In addition to being thrifty and keeping the house, saving charcoal, we must also increase wisdom. Cutting wood and burning charcoal in the mountains is another kind of charcoal, and buying charcoal with people is another kind. In addition, burning charcoal for heating in the cold winter is not only in your own control. When the fire is good, you should also pay attention to the people sitting around the furnace, and try to prevent everyone from feeling that the temperature of the charcoal fire is too hot. Lin Zhengqing nodded, inferred from other things, is a smart man, chatting effortlessly. The three younger brothers and sisters of the younger generation of Li on Fu Lu Street indeed all responded to that admonishment. Lin Zhengqing asked casually, "Is there any insight after being an official for so many years?" "Don't despise anyone." Li Baozhen said, "Emperors and generals, traffickers, pawns, gods on the mountains, ghosts and spirits, each has its own merits, especially pay attention to the fact that the lower and the lower have the upper and the upper wisdom." Zhu Lu hesitated, and said softly, "Uncle Lin, for so many years, the sun has always liked to deal with the three religions and the 9 Lu, but there are not many intersections with the officials of Dali." Lin Zhengqing smiled and said, "Don't use Qianlong." Li Baozhen looked as usual. Lin Zhengqing said, "I want to get a comment about seeing the dragon in the field. I almost mean it. Of course, I'm working as a logging yard. I just met a junior from my hometown and couldn't help but say a few words about relying on the old and selling the old. No. Senior official of the Li Zhizao, don't take it seriously." Li Baozhen smiled and said, "It was after many years of leaving his hometown that he knew how precious the old sayings of the old people in his hometown are. Different from people in ordinary places, the farther and longer they leave their hometown, they will feel that their hometown is smaller. The young people like Liju Dongtian are more promising. Without exception, they will feel that their hometown is big and deep. Not bottomed out. After chatting for about half an hour, Lin Jingqing still didn't have much words. Most of it was Li Baozhen looking for a chat. He would also talk about the past. Lin Jingqing never showed impatient expression. Li Baozhen left the logging yard with Zhu He and Zhu Lu. After leaving the county, Li Baozhen sacrificed a talisman to take care of Zhu Lu and returned to Yuzhou, but instead of heading straight to the weaving bureau, he went to a place. Hilltop. The night was heavy, and Li Baozhen had nothing to do. Sitting cross-legged on the bow, he picked up a ball of light condensed by aura, and the boat was swiftly stunned, drawing a stream of fireflies in the night sky. The father and daughter were silent, each with their own thoughts. He has been in the 7 realms of martial arts for many years, and after a few more years of physical strength, he is expected to travel far away as a pure martial artist. According to the arrangements of the second son, as long as he becomes a remote traveler, he will be transferred from the weaving bureau to a local military attaché. The official position will not be too high, but there are military merits and martial arts in the body, but also a far-flung martial artist, presumably not too low. Then in the future, building ancestral halls, compiling genealogy, and enshrining ancestral gods will no longer be a luxury. He, a martial artist, with the status of a lowly nationality in the past, has done this, and it is also considered a glorious lintel. He has not always been a very ambitious person. If it were not to repay the kindness of the Li family, he would also need to make long-term considerations for his only daughter, Zhu Lu. In fact, he would rather be able to leave the officialdom and stay away from the treasure bottle of the Dali dynasty. In the southern part of the continent, a certain country settled down on the rivers and lakes. Zhu Lu has a complicated mood. Zhu Lu, who has been away from home for many years and is no longer a girl, occasionally thinks, if she hadn't left the school team back then, what would her life experience be like? At the beginning, the group left the town, walked through Longshu River and Tiefu River, past Chiduan Mountain, and finally reached Hongzhou town. Then there was the storm and they parted ways. If she never separated, she followed to Desui Academy. Li Baoping, she and father. Lin Shi, Li Huai, and that person. Zhu Lu felt that there were 2 groups of people at that time. Although they were in the same group, they were 2 kinds of people. During the period, they met a man wearing a hat, a sword, and a donkey. He called himself Liang, a kind-hearted, and a swordsman. He also claims to be invincible in swordsmanship and peerless. When serious, he even feels terrible. He can use swordsmanship freely, not splashing water, and even if he is not good at swordsmanship when he wets a corner of his clothes. So every time he walks by the river, Li Huai wants to be Liang. Standing on the shore, picking up a pile of stones by himself, Liang shook his arms about the so-called swordsmanship, or waited for the rain with his fingers. It has been noisy until the end. Even an honest person like Zhu He feels that the seemingly unfathomable swordsman is a liar who can only talk about it. As a result, in the place where the 3 rivers converge, as if the rivers and waters are separated and combined, it seems that 3 completely different life paths have just been separated. She and her father sadly left Hongzhou town and followed the second son of Li's family on Fulu Street. Li Baoping and his party continued to Desui Mountain Cliff Academy. As for the shameless embryo, he broke the sky on that day and went to the Qingming world, and he was able to question both the fist and the sword with the second head teacher by Yujing, and then he was able to enter the 14th realm as a sword repairer. Lin Shi has served as the temple blessing of Dadu in the middle of China. He is already a monk in the nascent soul realm. It is said that he has recently started to retreat. Li Baoping is already a gentleman in the academy. Even that Li Huai somehow became a wise man of Desui Mountain Cliff Academy. As for that person, it is, on the mountain road, of future life, Ichi Juechen. After I heard that, at the border of Dei, there were 3 more students in the school team. The white-clothed boy Chui Dongshan took 2 Lu family survivors, Yu Lu and Thank You, and traveled to Desui together. Yu Lu, the prince of Lu's subjugation, was already a martial artist in the remote travel realm. Thank you for being a land god. Except for Li Baoping, the little owner of the Li family on Falu Street, everyone else is simply a group of unreasonable monsters. Especially the mud-legged man surnamed Chin, Straw Sandal Hatchet, was once a thin young man like black charcoal. Later, when I learned that the other party had bought many hills including Shitsi Poshan, it gradually became like a fairy mansion on the mountain. There are some worries in her heart, but she feels that as long as she follows the second son, everything will be worry-free. Later, when Luopishan asked for a gift to Zheng Yangshan, Zhu Lu was even more worried, but her father advised her not to do this, saying that this person has a simple temperament and would never turn the old account with our father and daughter. Later, a report from the Shanshui mansion of Shenzhou Shanhaizong made Zhu Lu completely panicked. Zhu He sensed that his daughter's concerns were serious, and asked softly, "What do you think?" Zhu Lu smiled and shook his head, "Nothing. There is a scenic spot in Yuzhou, named Tianzhufing. There is a high peak, and every sunrise and sunset, there will be a sea of golden clouds and the scenery is magnificent." A middle-aged but not yet married general with real power, stayed overnight at the Shanzhong Daoguan, ready to watch the sunrise here. The man was born in the Dali domain, but he has achieved the high position of General Yuzhou. Civilian Lu Qingfeng and military commander Chao Mao are all very famous high-ranking officials from outside Dali. According to the rules of the Dali court, the military commander is the ultimate patrol hunter. He has the highest official position. From the first rank, to this step, there is no official title. Only the few posthumous titles and false titles are exquisite. That is, there are a total of 12 generals in Xizheng, 4 towns and Saiping. Now half of them have followed Song Changjing to the barren world, and the remaining half are stationed on the long border in the middle of Aquarius, and then the generals of Yizhou, but not all there are all states, but Dali is only set up in places where military experts like Yuzhou are in battle. In the middle of the night, Chao Mao left a few soldiers and a monk who accompanied the army, left the temple built in the mountain alone, climbed to the top of Tianzhu Peak, and found a flat place, moved a stone as a bench, and sat silently. Chao Mao suddenly narrowed his eyes, and a talisman suddenly arrived, changing its trajectory a bit, not going to the gymnasium, raising the route, and falling to the top of the peak. After Chao Mao saw the 3 people on Fu Zhou clearly, he was indifferent and didn't mean to stand up to meet him. A 4th-rank weaving officer from Tianfula Street, Liz Hudong, talked about personal relationships, but met a few people. Nodding friends are not counted. When talking about official business, both sides are working in Yuzhou. Everyone I can't control anyone. Li Baozhen clasped his fists and smiled, "I have seen General Chao." Chao Wu just nodded, and didn't ask the other party for coming. Li Baozhen moved forward and squatted aside. Zhu He and Zhu Lu, his father and daughter, were standing not far away. Chao Wu saw that Li Zhizao actually put on a posture of being dumb. He really didn't want to be disturbed by an outsider. He frowned slightly, and asked, "What's the matter?" Li Baozhen smiled and said, "I just want to talk to someone who is nostalgic, otherwise he will go directly to the government office to find General Chao." General Chao Wu of Yuzhou, under the command of the hunting envoy Su Gaoshan, originally followed Dei Tiechi all the way south to Old Dragon City, the southernmost point of a continent. Later, the Dayu dynasty of one country and one continent had to use the Old Dragon City as the Old Dragon City. The stronghold, with the force of one continent to resist the monster army in the wild world, the Dolibian army fought and retreated to Dadu in the middle of Aquarius Island. One went south and the other returned north. In these two uninterrupted battles, Chao Wuli made a series of exploits. Although he was not a native of the Dai dynasty, he eventually stood out and became the most promising one among the old generals of Su Gaoshan. In the first month of each year, Chao Wuhui took time out. In the past, he went to visit the widow of the general in Dali capital. Now he is going to visit Su Gaoshan's ancestral hometown for New Year. It's not that there are no gossips in the officialdom of the capital. Some say that he is pretending to be shown to His Majesty the Emperor. He wants to take the opportunity to win over the old department of Su Xuanshou and stand on his own mountain. There are also some harsher words saying that he is burning a cold stove. Chao Wu, it didn't matter. General Su had a good understanding of himself. When General Su was alive, it was good for New Year's greetings or congratulations. The gate of Su Mansion on Cheer Street was overcrowded. There is no shortage of him. Today is different. General Su is gone. Inside, no one is missing, he can't be missing. Chao Wu said, Li Jizao, it seems that we are not familiar with it yet. Li Baozhen asked with a smile, when will General Chao return home in good shape? Chao Wu smiled and said, why did Li Jizao say this? Han Jingling, the current emperor of Shihao Kingdom, the generals of Huanghe and his ilk, and Chao Wu, the current general of the Dali imperial court, could not be equal at all. If Chao Wu was willing to regain his identity, even if he deliberately removed the identity of General Yuzhou and returned to Shihao country alone, it would not be impossible to change his dynasty. Li Baozhen was born as a spy leader of Dai, and of course he knows the true identity of the general of Yuzhou. Chao Wu's real name is Su Mao, and he comes from Shihaguo, one of the vassals of the old Zhuiying dynasty. Before he went to the court of Dai, he was Xingxi. The rank of military commander, attached to one of the young princes, Su Mao has an ancestral long scorpion, recognized as the first person in horse warfare, Shihao Kingdom, and everyone knows the name given by the imperial emperor, Hengfu Shilang. Su Mao was originally the confidant of the Prince Han Jingxin, and the Su family was one of the mainstays of the Shihao Kingdom's frontier army. Su Mao was frustrated. On the other side of Gaoshan, he started as a scout commander and was promoted step by step to the current general of Yuzhou with his solid military skills. However, Su Mao was still smart and knew that he was incognito, so he used the pseudonym Chao Mao early, otherwise Su Mao's work would be used. As a matter of fact, once it leaks out, don't even think about getting involved in the Dali frontier army. After all, in order to stop Dali Iron Cavalier's southward horseshoes, Shihao Kingdom did not hesitate to light up all the frontier troops and trap the capital, but Dali Iron Cavalry, from military commanders to school officers and soldiers, turned to the soldiers of Shihao Kingdom who did not hesitate to hit the stone with pebbles. Quite respectful. Li Baozhen shook his head and said, Brother Su Mao, why should I ask you knowingly? Chao Wu squinted his eyes and said, the emperor meant it. Li Baozhen laughed dumbly, picked up a stone at his feet, and gently threw it away from the cliff. Your Majesty has always trusted Su Mao brothers. What's more, our Dali frontier army has been from the patrol hunter to the general military soldiers. Regardless of your background, just looking at your military merits, how can your Majesty lose a meritorious general and the mainstay of the frontier army because of the status of brother Su Mao, who will have a lot of troubles? Chao Wu said, I was the one who led the war, and I was the one weaving with you. Now it's a peaceful situation where there is no war to fight, but I can't urinate in a pot. Li Baozhen smiled and said, in the words of my hometown, we are old brothers. Chao Wu sneered and said, it's not a fellow villager in the same year, so why did Li Jizao say this? Li Baozhen said, Brother Su Mao and I are of the same zodiac. In my hometown, let alone the same zodiac, they are both married sons-in-law. When they meet on the road, they will also shout for the old brother. Zhu He scowled. Zhu Lu held back his smile. The son was talking nonsense again. Chao Wu had no patience. If it's okay, don't look for trouble. Li Baozhen found a few more stones and threw them off the cliff. You and I have met that person before, and both suffered from him. Chao Wu was silent, his thoughts drifting away. In the early days of Shihao Kingdom near Shujian Lake, two groups of people met on a narrow road in the wind and snow. A young man in a cyan cotton robe, with two entourages. Ghost repair boy Zenji, female ghost Ma Di wearing a fox fur talisman. The Prince Han Jingxin, who has not yet been entrusted to the feudal clan, is personally guarded. He is the first person in the martial arts of that stone country, and the martial artist Hu Han is in golden status. There are also two confidants, the young General Su Mao, who is known as the Hingfu Fu Shi Lang, and the mansion worshipper, Mr. Zheng. After the turmoil, Su Mao personally killed the more than 40 horsemen who had been the elite obedience of the palace. Then cut off the Prince Han Jingxin's head with a saber and hung it around his waist. Picked 3 war horses and planned to stop there. Leave your hometown, find another way out, and get a new life. It's just that Su Mao didn't leave in the wind and snow, but sat on horseback, waiting for the cotton-clothed man who was chasing Hu Han to return to his original place. The latter threw Hu Han's head to Su Mao, and Su Mao was not polite. He hung his head on the other side of the saddle. It was also a great achievement, and he used it as the name of the caste. At that time, the Shihao Kingdom was one of the important vassal states of the old Zhuiying dynasty. From His Majesty the Emperor, to the 100 officials of the civil and military temples, to the commanders of all roadside military officers, almost all of them were the main fighting faction. Although the national power is very different, Shihao country failed to cause too many casualties to the Dali cavalry, but even if the northern frontier army was all out, the capital was besieged by Su Gaoshan's army. Even if the Guizhou was cut off, it would not be with the Dali Song clan. Bow down and proclaim himself. For example, the Prince Han Jingxin once led Su Mao and his party to personally kill 2 Libyan army scouts with monks who were attached to the army. It's just the general trend, the end can only be pebble hitting the stone. As for Su Mao, who fell into the disadvantage of the protector, even if he managed to sneak into the capital alive and saw the emperor of the Shihao Kingdom, he was not accidentally given to death or was thrown into the battlefield. It is said that he would make up for his merits, anyway. It's all dead. After all, the death of a prince who was originally expected to inherit the Datong was not a trivial matter. Su Mao simply took refuge in the Dali general Su Gaoshan. Li Baozhen said in his own heart, besides, I have also met a person with the surname Zheng. He once promised to give me an official position. If there is no guess, he also promised you an official position, Dali patrol hunter. Make? Su Mao asked back, what about you, Shangzhou country's surname? The Su family has an ancestral motto passed down by word of mouth. It roughly means that the descendants of the Su family will need to repay a benefactor who goes to collect debts in the future. The descendants of the Su family of Shui, after seeing this person and ascertaining the identity of the other party, they must unconditionally repay the other party's kindness. Although he has no regrets, there is no room for bargaining. This long chrysanthemum, passed to Su Mao, is already the 5th generation. The Su family of Shihao Kingdom, loyal and loyal for generations, threw their heads and sprinkled blood and heat at the border, guarding the border for the Han emperors of the past. The boy nodded, it's what the master said when I hear it. The barren world, dragging down the river. Fei Fei began to retreat. Then came a group of monks from outside. It seemed that an appointment had been made. On the same day, I came to Yiluo and came to see Bai Zhe. It's like a compelling audience. One of them was very eye-catching, youthful, thin, wearing an old fur, with 2 blushes on his cheeks, and he looked very lively and angry. The young man's voice was crisp, and he said openly, Master Bai, discuss something with you. It turned out to be a girl who looked like a teenager. Bai Zhe smiled and said, talk about it. She rarely showed a somewhat twisted look, and said, I plan to take a trip to the vast world, and I will not take the initiative to cause trouble, but from the Great Wall of Sword Qi, whoever dares to stop, I will hack to death, and treat me as a wild world. I tried my best, but I couldn't cut it. I was beaten, caught, and killed. I thought I was inferior. But if I went to a certain continent in the Howran world, such as Aquarius, I wouldn't. It's going to be messy. Anyway, that's what I mean. Master Bai, you are so smart, you must know what I mean. Bai Zhe smiled and said, is it going to find him? She grinned, a smiling face, as bright as the sun. Bai Zhe said, then let's make an agreement. Whenever I fight with Li Xing, you will find a chance to return to the wilderness. Therefore, you must find a way out for yourself in advance, even if you lose it. Half-life, you have to return to the barren world. Before that, I can say hello to the saints. You only need to make sure that you will not be an enemy to the barbarians in the future, nor do you want to go to the wild world. Presumably the problem is not big. She was obviously surprised, really. She just said it casually. After saying hello to Bai Zhe, she was going to leave. She didn't expect Bai Zhe to speak so well. It seemed that he called Master Bai respectfully, and definitely didn't shout in vain. It's such a girl, she is the most top-notch among the ancient monster clan swordsmanship, possessing a lot of road names, white scenery, chaotic halo, location, Yaoling. Bai Zhe smiled warmly and said softly, it seems that I really like it. I'm not sure if I like it, but that guy avoids me and hasn't succeeded. Bai Jing was a little embarrassed. By the way, Master Bai, now my name is Xie Go. This new name, how is it? Is it a good fit? Bai Zhe gave a hum and nodded, I'm not good at naming. Fortunately, Bai Jing said, the other ancient great monsters who woke up from their long sleep. One by one, Dao Axian trembled, shocked, and their faces were not very good-looking. A person who can make Jian Xiu Bai Jing reverently call Master Bai, even if it is a scene, he must be qualified to make Bai Jing bow his head and subdue softly. Bai Zhe smiled and said, if you guessed correctly, you, including Bai Jing, have discussed in advance to see if you can get together and make a covenant with me, such as persuading me to leave you alone. It's almost enough. Bai Jing laughed and said, Master Bai, but now I regret it and stand on Master Bai's side. They are all named Bai, one family. One by one, staring at Bai Jing, a traitor who turned his back on his head, this is a wild world. There is not a single 14th realm leader, just relying on the large number, on my side, it doesn't make much sense. Bai Zhe squinted his eyes and said, it is reasonable unreasonable, not as an example. Where did Bai Jing care about the life and death of the allies? He just muttered happily, Xiao Mo, Xiao Mo. The name was taken with sincerity. Lin Zhengqing was alone at the logging yard. As in the small town of the past, Lin Zhengqing saw many things in his eyes, such as Zhu Lu, who always liked to complain about herself when she was a young girl. He is still kept in the dark and does not know his true origin. She has always felt that the achievements of the group of peers back then, their birth and talent, luck and fate, accounted for a lot of factors, such as Yu Lu's status as a subjugated prince, and Chen Pingan was because they met Ning Yao. Wei Bo, the master of the land of Kaidenshan, was lucky enough to become a disciple of Wensheng's lineage, and only then had a series of chance experiences. In fact, there is an idiom that is not widely circulated in the world of Qingming, called Zhu Chen Jihao. In addition, there is a relatively uncommon saying that Zhu and Chen's family will never contradict each other. Because Zhu Lu is quite good in terms of her origin. It can even be said that among the younger generation in the town, as long as Ruan Xiu, Li Lu and Li Shixing are not discussed. She is a well-deserved leader, even better than Xia Ling and Taoye Lane and Hu Feng from Shishi's shop are better, because Zhu Lu belongs to half of the outsiders of Li Zhu Dongtian. As for the chance, it was also given to her. Before Lu Qin came here as a guest, he revealed more secrets to Lin Jingqing. It turns out that Zhu Lu's predecessor was from the ancient battlefield in the Qingming world, Yuzhou Zhulu County. Therefore, she is neither the heart is higher than the sky and the fate is thinner than the paper, nor is it the fate of a young lady. Even her name has a lot of background. It is a bit similar to Li Baoping from Fulu Street to Beia Pingzu, and the person who gave the name Zhulu comes from a certain Daoist in Bai Yujing. Even Yudo is quite courteous women's crown. Because she is Bai Yujing, wore the protector of the town arranged by Lu Qin for the big brother. Of course, it may be just one. After all, there will be a secret protector next to Zhou Li, the Taoist priest. More, Lu Qin didn't say anything. But even if it is only one of the three, Lu Chen's respect for the master teacher is enough to see that Zhu Lu's life and talents are so good that Lu Qin deliberately shielded the heavens for Zhu Lu, who entered the Lizhu cave a few years in advance. Lin Jingqing listened to the three palms teaching the gods and gods over there, and said with a heartbreak, Zhu and Chen's family, Zhu Yu Chen must be respectful. Lin Jingqing understood the meaning of this sentence. Because Li Shixing was supposed to be Chen Zhu Lu, as a key chess piece that Bai Yujing sent to Haoran at a high cost, also served as the guardian of Li Shixing on the climbing path. Taoist, Zhu Lu's respect for Li Shixing is the meaning of the question. There is another sentence, a man meets a boy with a friend, a man meets a woman with a marriage, and it is good to get married, and never deviate. Lin Jingqing had strange eyes at the time. Lu Qin grinned and laughed at himself, making a mess of mandarin ducks. In the past, I didn't want to match the future young brother, Bai Yujing's forehead teacher, Luolang. Because Li Shixing occupies part of the Qin family's luck in the small town, the appearance of Zhu Lu was supposed to be both a debt repayment and a flower and fruit cause, similar to what the Buddhism said, fruit. To say that Zhu meets Chen must be respectful, it was originally applicable to Zhu Lu and Chen Pingan in Ni Ping Alley. In addition, if Zhu Lu can protect Li Baoping all the way to the Great Sui dynasty, by the way, he will study at the Mountain Cliff Academy. In Beia Pingzu, it will be a small merit. In the future, the Sanjiao patriarch will go out and wait for her to return to her hometown of Qingming. There must be another reward falling from the sky. In short, Bai Yujing will never let her go to a foreign land in vain. If Zhu Lu's life journey could go to this point step by step, it could have been a good talk on the mountain. It's just that the opportunity is available and can't be grasped, so he has to not talk, and Lu Qin pretends that there is no such thing at all. Just like the direct disciple of the Lingbao city Pang Ding, at the highest point of Bai Yujing, the young Taoist officials at that time showed a kind of tenacity, but let Yudo and Lu Qingao take a look. Sun Jiashu of the old Dragon City missed a fortune that was equivalent to the whole old Dragon City. Sun Jiashu did not become depressed by this, but realized a valuable truth that life is in the sky, and life is in oneself. Lin Jingqing also didn't bother to talk around with Lu Qin, and directly asked the other party how to deal with Zhu Lu. Do you just leave it alone to Zhu Lu, or plan to bring it back to the Qingming world one day? Lu Qin answered the question but only said a vague remark. There are many results in life, but there is no if. Lin Jingqing asked, Master Lu didn't plan to tell her the truth. Lu Qin shook his head, let's talk about it later, it won't help to tell the truth now. Once things are looked at in the long run, right and wrong, good or bad, right and wrong, it will be a mess. Lin Jingqing wondered, since Zhu Lu is so important, why should Master Lu let her go and watch Zhu Lu head towards a fork in the road that does not match expectations? When the secret letter sent by Li Baozhen to Zhu Lu was a critical turning point. There was no precaution before it happened. During those years when Lu Qin set up a stall, he had never met Zhu Lu. It seemed that he deliberately did not examine Zhu Lu's character, not to carve a piece of dusty jade, and Lu Qin did not have anything in the storm in Red Candle Town. Measures to remedy the situation. According to Lu Chen's Taoism, it is not impossible to calculate, just talk about Zhu Lu's martial arts. If Lu Chen wants to give some pointers, Zhu Lu's first 3 martial arts would never be so bumpy. Because according to the national master Cui Yang's guess, one of the top 10 martial arts masters in the Qingming world, a clone of Lu Qin, will inevitably occupy a place. It's just a fork in the road that is not in line with the original intention of the poor road, but it may be the right path for Zhu Lu in this life. How should such a thing and this principle be counted? Lu Qin smiled and said, a person who cultivates the Tao, how many times he has come to this world, whether he is resuscitated or not, in the final analysis, he still has to blame himself, and he needs to ask for more blessings. It seems that looking forward 10,000 years is inevitable. It seems that 10,000 years later, it is all accidental. The reason can be the spring festival couplets and the word blessing that are changed every year, a spring breeze and drizzle that comes and goes quietly, the winter snow that will always melt away, the water that is gone forever, and another seam patch. The old house in Nian is a new house that seems to be demolished and rebuilt, but still retains the foundation. It can also be the small towns and alleys of Lizhu Cave. If you like the gateway, you will visit the door, the house where you have quarreled, and you will detour if you don't like it. It's the grain shop, cloth shop, wine shop, funeral shop, and wedding shop, the bluestone slabs of Fulu Street and Taoye Lane, or the Huangni Road of Xinghua Lane. It can even be chicken dung on the table, the dog dung on the corner of the house, a dusty wine glass, the dripping traces in the alley year after year, a pair of people who are too lazy to clean it every time they eat. The green bamboo chopsticks that I wiped under my armpit. But the truth will only be the scorching sun that exposes the backs of the poor in the summer. It is the burning sight of everyone when they look up at the sun. There are thousands of reasons and thousands of reasons for you, whether you understand the truth or not, you have to bear it. There is a vernacular in the small town, which is often spoken by older people, who cannot see clearly and is deaf. He is already a bodhisattva. On the surface, this is a sentence full of self-deprecating words. People are about to die, and they are about to be wood. It is almost like a clay sculpture and wood carving of the bodhisattva. But if you look deeper, this is a very meaningful statement, but when the old saying is passed on for too long, it is too passed on from generation to generation, young people are no longer serious, even if they have heard it, even the old people who say such things. It's just a joke that is slightly sad or completely open. I am afraid that the disappearance of a local dialect is the death of a hometown, just like the death of an old man. At the entrance of a dragon kiln in the small town in the past, there was a master who was always clean after work, and an apprentice kiln worker who was next to charcoal, clay, and kiln fire all year round. Then at the head of the Great Wall of Jinchi, a gentleman and 2 students. Mr. Drinking took the lead in talking, and 2 proud students, Cui Dongshan and Chao Sunny, sang a harmony. The bead in the clothes of the poor boy is a good one. I will not seek for myself, but count other treasures. Counting other treasures will be useless. Please listen to me. The dirt is not stained, it is self-evident, and you can't help but grow up from the heart, and you will sound like a lion when you speak. The lions cried in Mud Bottle Alley. Sort of Coming Chapter 954. Qingming World, the border between Yongzhou and Peizhou. The 2 sisters walked in the courtyard and climbed side by side. The face of the women's crown was vague and unsteady, like clouds and water. A Shuiyun robe, thousands of immortal mountains. It is one of the few great monks in the 14 realms who participated in the last riverside discussion in Wuzhou. She was followed by a charming young woman with a crown of emperor and wearing a yellow dragon robe. It was Zhu Xian, the current son of the Yufu dynasty in Yongzhou. In the Qingming world, it is very common for women to ascend to the throne and inherit orthodoxy. A purple swallow rested on Zhu Xian's shoulder, surrounded by a golden swimming fish that was indeterminate and true, and 2 genuine dragon's whiskers had grown. Goldfish among scale worms and purple swallow among feather worms have always been regarded as species gods. Therefore, these 2 types of spiritual objects are relatively easy to form and form. It is rumored that the 2 sides can go to the high places of the road. Real dragon, the latter can be reborn as the legendary Suzaku. The former is fairly numerous, but the latter is a handful. Both parties climbed together. It's just this mountain, but it's a mountain range at the bottom of Dada water. There is no bottom in the mighty Qingming, the sun and the moon shining on the gold and silver platform. The mountain shrines and temples were actually built under the water, which is also a unique sight in the Qingming world. Fei Gulu Dan, cloud steaming Xia Wei. The top of the mountain, because the mountain is slightly sunken like a basin, has the common name of wash basin, and one of the mountain shrines and temples has the nickname of a dressing table. It seems that Sun Huaizhong once traveled here, and the 2 theories first given by the old master of Xian Duguan soon spread widely in several states. This old master is simply a landscape mansion that walks under the sky. Wu Zhou asked with a smile, I heard that Lao Sanlu promised you that he would bring a chief worship to your Yufu dynasty. Zhu Xian nodded and said, so the position has been vacant these years. This time Master Lu returned to Bai Yujing, should give me an explanation. Anyway, give me an approximate number of years. Otherwise, it would not be a problem that it would be so delayed. It seems that anyone who is familiar with Lu Qin can't compare the identity and realm of the 3rd master of Bai Yujing. Wu Zhou smiled and said, Yongzhou, are you going to have a second true dragon? In the awe-inspiring world, there is already the true dragon King Zhu. The Qingming world is a pattern of 9 mountains and 1 river. The richness of water transport is far from comparable to that of Hauran. It is indeed difficult to produce a true dragon and also difficult to raise. Because of the battle of ascent to the sky, the dragons who practiced the Taoism were almost all left in the vast world with the 4 seas, and the 4 seas dragon palace, Dadu, rivers, lakes and lakes were opened up, countless and responsible. Clouds and rain. Zhu Xian said, don't dare to make this extravagant hope. Wu Zhou reminded, it is possible to fight for the Qigu again. After he breaks the border, the gift of martial arts is nothing. The main thing is the rice thief King Yuanlu. The road is promising. If you succeed in winning the Qigu, with his friendship with Wang Yuanlu cannot be said to be a good deal of buy one get one free. It can be seen that Qigu and Wang Yuanlu are both very nostalgic people. If Qigu served as the royal worship of Yufu Zhu's family, followed by Wang Yuanlu, as a master of 10 jungles somewhere in the territory, for the thriving Yufu dynasty, it would be equivalent to 2 big aids. Zhu Xian frowned, it's just that she was vague, and she was clearly moved, but she still refused to nod her head. She gave a correct sentence, saying that she wanted to return to her hometown of Wuling County first. Compared with the Qingshan dynasty in Bingzhou, whether it is national strength or the top combat power of the Taoist officials, Yufu Zhu is still a big difference. After all, Yongzhou is only a small state with a weak foundation, which is a bit similar to the treasure of the world. Pingzhou, many things are really doing dojos in snail shells. Fortunately, the Taiyin patriarch next to him returned to his homeland. In this way, Yongzhou would be equivalent to having a 14th-level monk sitting in the mountains and rivers. The reason why Wuzhou favors the Yufu dynasty so much is that it was once her place of cultivation, but it has long since become a relic. Moreover, the first fairy soldier she refined is now the treasure of the Yufu dynasty. Wuzhou gifted Yufu to the founding emperor of the Zhu family. That magnificent man was once a half-Taoist companion in our continent. In the end, Wuzhou is optimistic about Zhu Xian's achievements in the Great Road. 100 years old, she is already an immortal. Give Zhu Xian another 400 to 500 years, and give her another great opportunity. The extremely high-flying dragon, one person, one dragon, and at the same time proving that the national power of the Yufu dynasty at that time is worth looking forward to, so Wuzhou is willing to reopen the dojo site in Yongzhou. A Qi trainer, who has entered the 14th realm in the legend, becomes a person of Taoism, and the next path of cultivation will become very embarrassing and boring. Wu Zhou smiled and said, "It's human actions." Zhu Xian nodded, "Follow the fate of everyone." Wu Zhou said casually, "If I change it to you, I will simply visit the Qingshan dynasty with them and go to the Azure God dynasty with them. It's a trip to relax." Zhu Xian said helplessly, "I have this idea, but it's a pity that I can't get out of it. The major event of the country lies in the sacrifice and the army. Yongzhou has a small territory, and the Yufu Zhu family is unique, so after Zhu Xian ascended the throne, there were very few wars and battles, but the sacrifice of Zhaijiao is really an important matter of exhaustion and effort, because there are many types of sacrifices and complicated rituals. Not only the burnt and sacrifice of heaven and earth, the sinking of water offerings, the hanging of offering sacrifices to mountain gods, etc., gods, humans, ghosts, and earth, as well as many mountain gods, all need to be respected. In addition, there are still every few years. There are 2 rituals of gold and jade each. Zhu Xian belongs to the ruler of a country with relatively low qualifications and cannot give these things to outsiders for the time being. Therefore, she has at least 3 months throughout the year and is not in the ritual ceremony. It's on the way to the Zhaijiao sacrifices, especially the entire Yufu dynasty recently. It's preparing for a great glutinous ritual that has not met all over the world in a century. There are as many as 3,600 divine thrones. The Taoist officials of Gaogong and the abbots of Taoist temples of various veins came to the capital to participate in the grand event. They all needed the female emperor Zhu Xian, who was the priest, to do it herself, so she couldn't get away from it. Fortunately, the first emperor only surrendered the throne to her after she'd entered the fairyland. Wuzhou joked, "Your fish talisman lacks a foot to allow the monarch to govern and look elegant." Yaxiang Yaoqing is indeed the auxiliary minister that any emperor dreams of. Approaching the top of the mountain, Wuzhou suddenly stopped, squinted at the sky, and through the dotted water curtain, her sight extended all the way to the highest point in the north. Wuzhou said something similar to astronomical terminology for no reason. The Big Dipper armillary sphere can be found in the beginning and end of the incident. As a Taoist official, especially the prince of a country, often abbots make sacrifices. Of course, Zhu Xian will not feel unfamiliar. Following the line of sight of our continent, she looks at the rumored place that is much dimmer compared to the stars 10,000 years ago. Ziwei. Ziwei is close to the Big Horn, and the emperor is right on the ground. The sky and the city are in the middle, with a pairing line hanging down. Ziwei is located in the center of the northern sky, with the North Pole as its center. Because the gods revolve, the universe and the yin and yang open and close, rumors were once in this palace, hence the name, Purple Palace. Wuzhou continued to move higher, and smiled. 2 Jingshan, Dachao sect, plus the vassal hills set up by the 2 sects, are linked together, and a certain person is added. It is a coincidence, the most coincidentally, of course, it is the kind of match made in heaven as if the gods make beauty. Astronomical portrait, Chao Gu, the girl, played a big game of chess. Zhu Xian's heart moved slightly and frowned, that's why Su Jun only had to die last time. It's similar to becoming as a ghost. Is it possible that these are the layouts of Chaoge and Liang Jingshan? Wu Zhou smiled and said, maybe Chaoge had premeditated, maybe she made a mistake, and more likely, she saw a chance that she could take advantage of the situation during her retreat. Maybe she was the opportunity, for harmony is not in yourself, but in a certain time. It is just speculation. I am not good at fortune-telling. Next time you meet that Master Lu, you can ask him by yourself. Has always been proficient in this way. If you leave the process aside and just look at the result, Qi and Huang are connected to the two domains, and you are happy. The Dachao sect and Liang Jingxin, who were originally a pair of mortal enemies, abandon the previous suspicions and sincerely cooperate with each other. Of course, it is a win-win situation. Then Su Jun is the leader of the two sects, and it is a great advantage. The Purple Palace is harmonious and upright, then to the phoenix, chanting. It was the marriage, it was the Chaoga of the ancestor of the two Jingshan women, and Su Jun became a Taoist couple, and the Chaoga of the women's championship would never be in vain. Zigong Xingxing is Jichang, with strong internal support. Of course, it is said that the current Liang Jingxin and Daqiazong are unstoppable after they are closed. Then once the Zigong Qi is straight, it is the emperor who will lead the soldiers himself, and then the Zigong will open up. It is the situation of the world's soldiers rising. Wu Zhou said, "We cultivators, apart from breaking the realm, there are still many things that can be done, especially if our practice runs into a wall and cannot break a certain bottleneck. We always find something to do, just like me. This time I came out of the mountain, did not come here too." A family of three religions, Confucianism, Buddhism and Taoism plus a military strategist, the ancestors of the three religions strayed from Taoism. From the wild world invaded the Howran world, and then to the Howran world's counterattack against the wild. In contrast to the current 14 states of Qingming, is it not chaotic? Maybe a little spark, maybe it is a wildfire. The war that sweeps the world, no matter who fights, no matter who loses or wins, who wins in the end? Naturally, outside the ancestral court of the military strategist, that small group of certain Taoist scholars hiding behind the scenes, sit back and enjoy their achievements and steal their luck. As a matter of fact, there is an invisible battle between tactics. Therefore, the sages of the Chinese and Turkish Confucian temple used flawless accomplishments as the reason to change the order of the 72nd generals of the Wu temple to accompany the gods. It was by no means a simple book business spirit, but a profound significance. If, not if, show me, this guy must have a backhand in the world, then there are several possibilities to help the Zhou Mi who has gone to the sky, echoing from top to bottom, and from inside to outside. For example, Zhou Mi once left a concealed clone in the world. It was either a sword repairman who promised a chance to be in the 14th realm of pure sword repair in the future, or a soldier monk who was able to fish in troubled waters, and then all other possibilities. After all, thoughtful thoughts, most people really can't guess. It's just the sword repairing journey that benefits the most, but the risk is the greatest, because Howran is missing one of the most proud people in the world, but there is an extra Bai Yi who is already a sword repairer in the Xuandu view of the Qingming world. It's so white. It is equivalent to sitting off the river twice and blocking the way carefully by one's own efforts. Zhu Xian asked sincerely, "Can I do something for seniors?" Wu Zhou laughed blankly. Zhu Xian knew he had made a mistake. She can do it, how can our continent not be able to do it? Wu Zhou smiled and squeezed Zhu Xian's cheek, and said, "Good intentions." Zhu Xian hesitated to speak but stopped. Wu Zhou shook his head and said, "You won't give the broken array, and I won't want it either." Previously, Zhu Xian recruited Qi Gu to serve as the consecration. She gave the condition that this magic weapon was taken out of the royal secret library and temporarily loaned to Qi Gu for a period of 300 years. In fact, this divine soldier was once a token of love, and it was the founding emperor who personally gave to the Yufu dynasty in the early years of Wu Zhou. My continent needs to collect magical soldiers to continue to unite, the more the better, but this is the only thing, my continent has no idea. Today, The Qingming world is recorded and documented, including the broken array. There are a total of 18 relics of the gods. They are all hard-won and rare things. Only a handful of soldiers were left in the Qingming world in the battle of ascending to the sky. The ruins and the corpses of the gods are turned into the land of stars, excavated, or fished from the broken secret realm of the long river of time. Among them, the two with the highest rank, one treasured in Baiyujing Biyun Tower, is an ancient armor that has been banned for thousands of years. The other one is on Wuzhou, or she is herself, because to be precise, this thing is already part of her harmony. When she was young, she obtained a part of her life's magical powers, one of the ancient 12 high-ranking gods, the caster, by chance. The semi-celestial soldiers cast and exercised by our own hands have long surpassed the number of hands. They were only checked by the monks at the top of the Qingming Tianxia mountain. As for the number of fairy soldiers, except for our own knowledge of the specific number, the outside world can only guess wildly. Therefore, Wuzhou is well-deserved as the number one master in the world. At the wedding banquet of Su Jun and Chao Gu, Wuzhou and Yudo had a heartfelt question at the main table, but they were rejected directly by the other party. The conditions given by Wuzhou are not insincere. As long as Biyun Tower takes out the armor and hands it to her for refining, then she can help Baiyujing solve a hidden danger in the future, as to which state the hidden danger is, or Baiyujing decides on someone. As long as she gives a message, she will help settle the situation, willing to do anything at all costs. But the second son of Tao was not moved at all. Mostly it will be a gift to the disciple of the Taoist Guanman of that Taoist named Shanqing, who will be the lord of a certain city or a certain building in the future. After the 15 well-documented soldiers, among them was the saber of Sui Chu Gong Wu Shuangjiang, and one of the relics of the ancient execution platform. It's not too surprising that there is no fruit on Yudo's side. Baiyujing's family has a lot of business, and Dao's second child is so temperamental, but Wuzhou frowned slightly. It's quite reasonable. Why is it so urinary on the other side of the palace? A narrow knife is not considered too high, but Wu Shuangjiang doesn't use it himself. Why he doesn't want to nod? Are you going to eat ashes in the Sui Chu Gong? Wuzhou previously went to the Crane Tower in secret, and also gave a deal that he believed to be extremely sincere, but he never thought it would be lost. There have been some road deductions in Wuzhou, but they have not been able to bypass Wu Shuangjiang, and the other party is obviously blocking the way deliberately. After all, the calculation is one way. Wuzhou believes that he is not proficient, and can only be regarded as an introductory one. The biggest weird thing about this kind of magic weapon is that the Qi practitioner wants to refine it. It can be described as a lot of hardships. The most typical example is the 4 fairy swords that bred birth spirits, even if the Taoism is as good as a fight. It can only be made to recognize the master, but it is still unable to be refined into a life thing. Fortunately, the Qi trainer succeeded in a certain magic weapon. The cultivation level is not high enough, or the Tao heart is not strong enough. It is easy to change the mind and nature. Following the magical power of that magic weapon, subtle changes will occur, and in the end it will be like being occupied by a magpie's nest. Causing catastrophes, ranging from harm to the fundamentals of the great Tao, on the other hand, getting into trouble, losing the mind, changing the temperament, and going to an extreme, such as becoming extremely murderous and uncontrollable. In the history of Qingming, there were nearly 20 incidents of disasters that had no warning signs, just by Baiyujing's clear records. But the strangest thing is that if it is succeeded by a pure wufu, it will be like a tiger. It will be very easy to use. There are almost no sequelae. It can even temper the body. It is a bit like the natural complement of the flying sword of the natal sword and the sword repair. Ruzhou Linjiangxian, Runhua Peak has worked hard. Bingzhou Women's National Teacher, White Lotus Root. These three boundless martial artists, the top three masters of martial arts in the world, have just one magic weapon. Jiang Zhaomao in the Ziki Tower also seemed to have a rank-and-class magic weapon, which belonged to his predecessor. On the other hand, the training of airmen, holding the magic weapon in hand, all need to be careful and careful. There used to be a great monk in the ascending realm who almost held a divine weapon and completely opened the barrier of the outer sky, which was enough to be a passage for the outer world demon to come to the blue underworld. Yudo left by Yujing and traveled far away with a sword, almost cutting off the head of the great monk. It was the master who personally stopped the two sides, filled the holes, and then brought the old monk back to Baiyujing Verdant City, followed the master for hundreds of years, and finally recovered a clear Taoist heart and later became a god. Lord of Xiaocheng. The head teacher Ko Ming once served as Hangoling. In the early days when Taoist ancestors rode oxen to pass the customs, Ko Mingji watched the stars and discovered the secret of heaven. According to legend, the Taoist ancestor taught 5,000 words, and Ko Ming annotated a Shixing Jing, which is highly regarded by the Loguan school and respected as the first sutra. Wu Zhou smiled and said, "It is possible to go to the wild world. Over there is an old immortal who just woke up not long ago. By coincidence, he had a potential dispute with me." Wu Zhou took out a lotus leaf cup, and the wine overflowed by herself, and the wine was scented. She was not busy drinking, just twisted it lightly, slightly sad, and laughed at herself. Looking back at the deceased, you can reminisce about the old. Very few. The former city lord of Shinshao City, that is, the old monk who almost made a big mistake, his real name is Yao Kizhou, and his Dao name is Nigu. He used to be a senior official of Baiyujing with the Gaogu people of Daifishan Mountain. And Shinshao City and Zuandugwan both have a peach forest. Yao Kizhou is also one of the few Baiyujing Taoist officials who can be friends with Xian Duguan Sun Huaizhong. Yao Kizhou was not born as a direct descendant of Baiyujing, but was halfway transferred to Baiyujing. Made a big mistake. If it hadn't been for the great leader Ko Ming to stop him, he would have already died under Yudo Jian, and there would be no chance to correct his mistakes. Ko Ming brought the devious Yao Kizhou back to the dojo of Verdant City. Later, Yao Kizhou became the lord of Shinshao City. In fact, he criticized him. Because he couldn't believe in Yao Kizhou, or he couldn't believe in the Dao heart of the ascended monk, and even guessed that the Baiyujing city lord Tianxian with the Dao name imitated ancient was actually no different from the Huawei Tianma, but was suppressed by the help of the great headmaster. Therefore, many Baiyujing Taoist officials have had a bad impression of the entire Shinshao city for so many years, and they have been watching with cold eyes, as if they were waiting for Yao Kizhou to make another mistake. The veteran Taoist slowly accumulated merits, and finally paid off the debt on Baiyujing's book that only 3 head teachers could read. A one-off write-off. That day, the old Taoist priest left Baiyujing alone to go to a wine shop in the far-away hometown. He invited himself to drink and drink. It's like a common citizen, who has worked hard to pay off debts for many years, and has no debts, and can finally drink alcohol happily. The comfort after the sadness is not enough for outsiders. The old man drank the bad wine in the market, like a fish in the water, and wandered freely. It seems that it has never been so easy since the cultivation of the Taoism. Outside the wine shop, there was heavy rain, and the old Taoist was drinking while turning his head and looking out, like watching the rain. Go straight ahead, and all evils will breathe. The old man looked happy, repeating the 2 words silently, heart and soul. 3 people successively walked into the shop from the rain curtain and sat down at the same table with the old Taoist priests to have a drink. One is Sun Huaizhong, the other is Lu Qin, and the other is Gao Gu. The 3 of them didn't say hello beforehand, and they all agreed. It just happened to be full of a wine table. Probably a cultivator does not only practice things. In the end, Yao Kizhou chose to go to the Great Wall of Jianqi and was one of the 3 saints who sat in the sky. Failed to come back. Maybe he didn't even think about coming back. Traveling away from home alone is like a move empty-handed, only moving away the entire hometown in the heart. Wu Zhou and Zhu Xian, the 2 walked to the wash basin on the top of the mountain, and saw that there was a small single-hole stone arch bridge over the stream. On the opposite side of the bridge is the mountain shrine closely guarded by the Yufu dynasty. The specifications are extremely high. The roof ridge is covered with jasper glazed tiles. If it can arrest the clouds and mist, it looks like snow. It is spread on the roof, but it flows slowly. Zhu Men Hihi, the 2 gates, like a place where the bright sunlight condenses and never disperses, but also decorated with danju. The situation is majestic, the roots of the mountains are stable, the temples control the waters of thousands of miles, and the great blasphemy, the life and death of the spirits, the temple gods are always in charge of the misfortune and blessings of the 4 directions. There is an ancient camphor tree next to the temple, which is very strange. It is 10 feet high and surrounded by ancient trees. It is surrounded by the sun and the moon. Wu Zhou raised his head and glanced at the camphor tree, sighed faintly, and when he came back, he was old, both people and trees are. This tree is extremely famous in the Qingming world, because it is said that although this 10,000-year-old camphor tree has not been able to nurture wisdom, it disseminates the 4 states' luck, and it can account for the good and bad luck of the 4 states. The camphor tree has 4 branches, each of which is responsible for the fortunes of the states and nations. If 4 guardians of the magicians hold an axe to chop the branches, if the twigs come back to life, the state will be blessed. If the branches have not been healed for many years, they will not be able to restore their original appearance. The predecessor of the state is sick, which means that there are hidden dangers in the mountains and rivers of a state. Then the monarchs of various countries can issue edicts, but if the branch cannot regenerate over the years, the state will perish. This time, the Yufu dynasty took Zhu Xian, the lord of the country, as the main priest, and held a Taoist glutinous rice dumpling of the highest standard. In fact, it is tantamount to a guanbao. Successfully holding this glutinous rice dumpling can justly help the Yufu dynasty and Yongzhou, and even the 4 states of the world inspected fortunes and disasters. Although the mountains and temples belonged to the Yufu dynasty, it is reasonable to say that the outside world could not tell how Yufu Zhu wanted to dispose of the old camphor tree, but in fact, the first emperor of Yufu Zhu had been in power for 500 years. In addition to the 300 years of the presidency of the monarch, for a full 800 years, there has not been a Putian gluttony. 2 key reasons, one inside and one outside. The former is that the 2 emperors of the Yufu Zhu clan recognize their virtues. Uncoordinated, I dare not easily divulge the secret of heaven, because it is not sacrificed but sacrificed. The latter, the so-called external pressure, is of course that Yufu Zhu needs to look at Bai Yujing's face. Wu Zhou asked, "How many branches do you plan to cut?" "It's no problem to cut only 1 branch of the old camphor tree. Anyway, if it is a blessing or a curse, it is regarded as a fish." Sword of Coming Chapter 955. Located in Mizhou, the northernmost part of the Qingming world, there is a lonely mountain top that rises above the plains, called Runhua Peak, and there is a weak water at the foot of the mountain. The mountain is steep, the stones are like jade, the rows of pine are like green, but the aura is thin. Obviously it is not a good geomantic place suitable for opening up a dojo. The mountain and water restriction of this Runhua Peak is the share of Wufu's hard work. It's like a mountaintop lake, the fist is like flowing water pouring over the mountain, but it can't hurt the life in the mountain at all. Wufu is not an end, and monks are not ascending, so there is no need to expect to reach the top. Don't wait for guests. There are more than a dozen pure martial artists from various states. They have different levels of martial arts. They find places to practice on the banks of weak waters at the foot of the mountain. They regard mountain climbing as the best way to practice boxing. The hard work of being the owner of Runua Peak never drove people. Today, there was a visitor from Runua Peak, a scholar with a green shirt, with sword eyebrows in his temples, very bookish. Seeing the figure of this person, there are constantly silhouettes of rabbits rising and falling, all of whom are long famous masters of martial arts, rushing to this place, wanting to pay tribute to this famous master of the forest. As a result, they were tens of feet or more than 100 feet away from the man, and they could no longer move forward half a step. It was like being cast a piece of anchoring talisman, allowing them to squeeze their feet, even punches, trying to open the way with both fists. Still can't go half a step forward. Immediately afterwards, several people were weakened, and their bodies began to slip out, like the road of martial arts in the world. In order to stop their retreat, the Wufu stomped the ground vigorously like thunder, but unfortunately it was still doomed to be futile, plowing the ground, and his legs drew 2 cracks on the ground. Among them was a white-haired old man who was a martial artist at the top of the mountain. The registration number, I just want to be able to chat with the longest-lived pure martial artist in the history of Qingming. Wu Fu Lin Jiangxian. One of the 10 people in the Qingming world. 6th, that the ranking is behind the thunderous Xuantaguan Sun's arms. But as long as the old master is away, every time he chats with people about Lin Jiangxian in the arena, he will say that he is ashamed when he meets people. Lin Jiangxian ignored those martial arts of all states who belong to the 3 realms of refining gods. There are no steps in the mountains, not even stone roads, only a winding dirt road leading to the top of the mountain, overgrown with weeds. At the top of Runua Peak, someone lived alone in a grassy cottage. He was a thin young man with a beard, unshaven face, and muddy eyes. The young man was sitting cross-legged on a boulder, rubbing an old bamboo flute. A pot of wine was placed at the feet, and a pile of pine nuts, simmered potato, and poria slices that seemed to be used as a side dish. Seeing Lin Jiangxian, he did not speak hard, but just nodded in greeting. Lin Jiangxian clasped his fists to give a gift, and did not explain his intention. Then he came to the huge boulder. With his hands folded, he looked at the weak gurgling water outside the mountain. According to legend, in the weak water, there were ancient immortals who used to refine it. The chain detained a green ape and a white snake that almost turned into a horned snake. After that, the 2 imprisoned animals under the water were similar to the mountain protection of Runua Peak. It's just that these ghosts and wonders have never been verified by the monks. The green ape and the white snake are spreading falsehoods. The mountain wind is bitter. The lyncher, in the green shirt of the scribes, his sleeves are dangling. For some reason, he has to work harder than Runua Peak, which never goes down the mountain, and gives people a sense of transcendence. There are no weeds in the mountains, so they are all treasures. There is a lot of haze here. He said hard and straightforwardly, I can't beat you, so I don't need to ask for a punch, I just give up. Such recognition is not like a pure taker at all, but it is the second in the world. Not long ago, he punched the white lotus root that was halfway up the mountain and fell back to the foot of the mountain, falling into the weak water. Lin Jiangxian smiled and said, I don't come here for the sake of learning, just come here to enjoy the scenery and relax. This is the first time the 2 sides have met. In addition to the few thatched huts built with painstaking efforts on the top of the mountain, there is a pile of rocks of different sizes and strange shapes. Especially not far away from the cliff, there is a piece of stone, especially outstanding, more than 10,000 feet, and its shape is stable. The lower circle on the upper level, floating on top of the stone, the 4 red lacquer characters of Yanshou Daochang are engraved on bangshuya, and there is no signature. Lin Jiangxian took a few more glances, and if nothing happened, this would be the stepping stone that was privately hailed as the resting place of the Taoist ancestors. However, the fact that Daozu once came here to rest has not been widely spread in the Qingming world, and only speculated privately inside the Dazongmen. Before Dao ancestor came to Runhua Peak, the only thing Runhua Peak could tell was the ancient pines in the mountains and the strange cloud aura of this piece of pumice. Therefore, there have always been legends of immortals and ghosts roaming on it. The reason why there have been no Qi practitioners to open up the dojo here in history is that this vision is just a fancy, a mountain without the aura of heaven and earth. To the Qi practitioners, it is a barren land and water without a source. Lin Jiangxian stood on the top of the mountain, his thoughts drifting away. Regardless of the moment, there stood a martial artist who reached the first level. According to a Shanshui Mansion News, Liang Jingshan Chaoga and Dachao sect Su Jun, these couples of great ages and world-famous Taoists, have just visited Runhua Peak, but they did not stay on the top of the mountain for a long time, and soon after returning to Liangjingshan, it seemed that he was going to retreat. The Taoist guard was an outsider, Yao Qing, the elegant minister of the Qing Shan dynasty. This shows that Chaoga is determined to win this retreat. Lin Jiangxian knows that the ascended female crown of the resurrected Taoist title was once a Chao Tian girl. As for the predecessor, it is a bit of a clue to catching the wind, because Yashan Wufu, spies all over the world, originated from the setting of Yashan. There is a secret agency called Barnyard Lawsuit, which is responsible for collecting street talks and historical stories. She put away the bamboo flute hard, picked up a few pine nuts by the foot, threw it into her mouth, and chewed slowly. Lin Jiangxian took out a wooden ink mold from his sleeve and tossed it lightly, returned to the original owner. By the way, I will pass on for my disciple again and apologize to you. It turned out that a young disciple of Lin Jiangxian was entangled by a young martial lunatic before. He had to apprentice a teacher. He had good aptitude, but his temperament was too frizzy. When the ghost retreated, he posed a problem for the young man. Come to Runhua Peak, whether you steal or ask, you must get back a brand new ink ingot, as a gift of apprenticeship, and become a disciple of Lin Jiangxian. I am willing to drink the apprentice tea and formally accept apprentices. As a result, the young man gave a small surprise, did not retrieve the ink ingot, but brought down this wooden ink model that more reveals his hard work in martial arts. According to the disciple Lin Jiangxian, he exhausted his true energy on the way to the mountain, fainted, and was rescued by hard work. He was allowed to recuperate on the side of the mountain. Give him an ink mold as a parting gift. Shaking his head hard, the ink model hovered in the air between the two and said, "Let him leave it as a memorial. If I didn't give it back then, he wouldn't be able to steal it." Lin Jiangxian couldn't help being laughed at. This new disciple who had just started, turned out to be a little thief who hadn't told him, and he could make good things. Previously on the side of Yashan, the young man said that he was a martial artist who had not seen him in 1,000 years. He also saw that he had great perseverance. The great master then developed a heart to cherish his talents and asked him if he would stay at Runhua Peak, as the great disciple of the mountain, but he didn't want to change his original intentions. He had already decided that master's candidate could be half-hearted, so he decided to go down the mountain. After hard work, I personally sent myself off to the foot of Runhua Peak. The two sides reluctantly said goodbye and became a year-end friendship. Runyufeng worked hard to practice martial arts, and his only hobby was to obtain local materials, cut down pine branches, and make pine smoke and ink. From smelting cigarettes, carving ink molds, smelting with a plastic pestle, and then polishing and tracing gold with ink, it is all hard work. There happens to be a herd of deer in the mountains, and the painstakingly refined Song Yen ink is extremely well known in the Qingming world. It is most suitable for copying scriptures in small letters, as well as the beards and eyebrows and feathers of meticulous painting figures. It is rumored that Su Zi, the world's awe-inspiring world, once traveled here. He did not take a trip in vain. He received a set of colored inks given so hard, so he came up with the phrase, "I didn't dare to use hard ink." In fact, Su Zi was here. After returning to his hometown, he disassembled this set of ink ingots and presented them to several protégés who had reunited for a long time. This shows how much Su Zi cherishes this set of ink ingots. Before Lin Zhongxian visited Runhua Peak, he asked his disciples to search for a few ink ingots carved with 30,000 pesos and 100,000 pesos. Not long ago, he also obtained a wooden ink mold. Of course, it is not that Lin Zhongxian likes arty. He can rely on the condensed level of the ink ingots and the knife skills of the ink molds to verify the general depth and precision of the hard work. It is not that Lin Zhongxian regards hard work as a threat to the world's first place, but just curiosity. The young martial artist who practiced boxing did not learn from others, and there was no one to help teach the boxing and feed the boxing. He didn't even have a decent boxing book. How could she be able to go all the way to the top of the martial arts on her own? It's hard climbing so fast. Seeing the hard work so polite, Lin Zhongxian retracted the ink mold into his sleeves as a reward for a peach, and smiled and reminded, there may be room for leaks and fills in the juk acupoint. Yutong and Yinchuang are 4 inches away. This route is purely invigorating and rests on you. In fact, you need to do the opposite. It should be turbid and not light. In addition, there is a 3-yang meridian route. No matter how well you carve it, you can use it. It doesn't matter if you pass a fist, maybe you can get a few points faster. After thinking hard for a moment, he nodded and said, "See you, Master Lin." Lin Zhongxian asked with a smile, "Since there are 30,000 pesos and 100,000 pesos, will there be 1,000,000 pesos for a new ink ingot in the future?" Nodded hard, "I have this plan. As for when the work will start, it's temporarily undecided. It depends on the weather." Lin Zhongxian smiled. "The Runhua Peak in front of me is working hard and likes to make ink. The female national teacher of the Qingshan dynasty, Bai O, is fond of collecting rubbings. As for Haoran, the last hermit of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, seemed to like to engrave. The young Takeo now has very elegant hobbies." He hesitated hard. "Could you ask the punch that Master Lin handed in Fanghu City back then?" Lin Zhongxian looked ahead and smiled and said, "When you ask me a fist one day, it will be clear naturally. I don't have to ask too much hard work. There are some taboos of the rivers and lakes, and I still understand it with hard work. Asking a master of martial arts about the bottom boxing technique is almost equivalent to asking a sword repairer's magical powers. Alone at the top of martial arts in the world, he has been independent for nearly 300 years. There are 10 martial arts critics in the world of Qingming Jiazi, and 6 martial arts critics have been held. The masters have changed one crop after another. Lin Zhongxian is always the best in the world without any suspense. Lin Zhongxian is over 360 years old. For pure Takeo, this is a well-deserved old age, and it is simply a shocking miracle. Ordinary martial arts masters, even those martial arts masters at the end, want to live to 200 years old. It is extremely difficult. Just talking about lifespan, compared to the Qixuan and his like, can casually stay in the world for hundreds of years, which is a world of difference. Before Pei Cup, the #1 martial artist in the world was Zhang Taoxia, who was nicknamed Long Bow, and the reason why he was able to live so long was because he turned to practice. But as a martial artist, Lin Zhongxian, who can be sincerely called Master of the Forest by the mountain monks, is just a pure martial artist. Therefore, there have been gossips that in fact, Lin Zhongxian had already secretly entered the 11th realm of the illusory martial art. According to the speculation on the mountain, the 11 realms of martial arts can be roughly regarded as the 14 realms of the Qi practitioner. After Lin Zhongxian established his transcendent position as the world's first person in martial arts, he began to create a martial arts sect called Ashen. After more than 200 years of development, it has grown into a profound foundation. The deep, intertwined gangs do not lose the top sect on the mountain. In Naruzu, the Yashan family dominates, and even more surprisingly, the Qijin dynasty where Lin Zhongxian belongs, and the orthodox Taoist official with a degree, there is no fairy in a country. Without Shanzhui Yi Xiu, the spirits and ghosts, especially the monster monks, are nowhere to be seen. A huge dynasty with a population of close to 80 million, there is no ghost, not to mention Ruzhou. This is an incredible thing in any world. Therefore, the people of the Qijin dynasty have not seen any weirds for more than 200 years. Lin Zhongxian only started accepting apprentices officially before Liang Jiazi. He successively accepted 4 disciples and 4 martial arts geniuses. They worshipped under the Master Lin, and all of them took place within just 1 jiazi. After that, Lin Zhongxian stopped accepting disciples. So far he has nothing to say about his disciples. For direct disciples, one end at the top of the 3 mountains. The Wufu who can approach this feat, there are several worlds, or the whole world. I am afraid that there is only the woman who is the of war in the world, Pei Cup. It is said that Ma Zhuxian, who is the big disciple of Pei Cup, has already reached the top of the mountain, and the other 2 female disciples, Dou Fenxia and Liao Qingai, are pure martial artists who are bottlenecked in the far travel realm. But even so, this is only a trip to the top of the mountain and 2 long distances, and there is still a long way to go with the direct biography of Lin Zhongxian, so it is still due to Pei Cup's acceptance of a direct biography called Chao Ci. As for the reincarnation disciples collected by these 4 people, together, there are probably more than 40 people. In addition, after 200 years of opening up the branches and leaves of Yashan, the disciples and grandchildren on the top of the genealogy are countless. It is not common for a gang of rivers and lakes to help hundreds of thousands of people in any world. In addition to serving as the royal worship of the dynasties of the Yashan family, the martial arts of Yashan helped suppress a country's martial arts, or set up martial arts halls, accepted disciples and taught art, and carried forward Yashan's own line of boxing. In the 2 states, dozens of sects still respect Lin Zhongxian as their ancestor. Lin Zhongxian once made a rule that he was only responsible for teaching boxing and was successful in martial arts. After the disciples walked out of the teacher's door, they were arrogant and grieved. The number of times that Lin Zhongxian took the initiative to ask people to fish was only a handful, but Lin Zhongxian didn't make a move. Just say that the Qi practitioner who died under the Lin Zhongxianquan, just in the upper 5 realms, there will be 1 soaring 2 immortals. The reason why there is no Jade Purity realm is of course because of lack of confidence and absolutely not dare to provoke Lin Zhongxian and Yashan. Lin Jiangxian's life and death battle with the Ascension Realm Great Monk, in the words of the martial artist who watched the battle, was too boring, because it was too thunder and the rain was too small, and he was killed by Lin Zhongxian less than half of the incense kung fu. This is still the Ascension Realm who spent half of his time with incense sticks. He used his life-saving escape method there, and finally fled all the way to the border of Ruzhou. He wanted to threaten Lin Zhongxian with the lives of hundreds of thousands of people in the capital of a small country. The author swears that he must ensure that he will not cause trouble within 500 years. It is clear that he wants Lin Zhongxian to throw a rat avoidance device. But as a result, this big monk who has nowhere to go, has not escaped, and is still killed by Lin Zhongxian on the spot. On the street in the capital of that small country, the most important thing was an ascending realm's death and death, unexpectedly silently, without causing any disturbance. This is because Lin Jiangxian's fatal blow was too mysterious and did not give the ascended realm cultivator a chance to implicate Lin Zhongxian by killing innocent people. Even the few martial artists who followed all the way far away, and the handful of them. The monks on the top of the mountain who watched the mountains and rivers were not sure how Lin Zhongxian punched. Therefore, Lu Qin said it was very interesting. Generally speaking, according to Bai Yujing's rules, the Ascended Realm monk made this shameful decision in full view. Even if Lin Jiangxian left here, even if he did not hurt his innocence, the Ascended Realm monk had to take his own initiative to take a trip to Baiyu. Beijing is coming. With a good calculation, if Lin Jiangxian copes with missteps, insists on killing, and does not mind that the capital is killed by the two sides and kills the pond fish, then as long as it causes any casualties in the secular dynasty, on Bai Yujing's side, Lin Jiangxian needs to bear the same guilt, and absolutely not light. Just betting, Lin Jiangxian didn't dare to go with him to a certain tower in Bai Yujing read the Taoist book. A young great monk in the Ascendant Realm can afford hundreds of years. Are you Lin Jiangxian willing? Are you willing to die in Bai Yujing? The only accident was that the great monk underestimated Lin Jiangxian's boxing skills. Lin Jiangxian turned his head and looked at the pumice stone that seemed to have turned the sky upside down, and asked, "This is where the Taoist ancestor rests, that stepping stone?" He didn't try to hide anything, nodded gently. At first, I didn't recognize Deus's identity with great effort, but the expert must be an expert, otherwise he would not be able to sit on the pumice stone without knowing it. At that time, it didn't take long for the hard work to reach the end, the boy with the appearance of a young Taoist boy, just watching hard work slowly walking on the top of the mountain, all silent and not disturbing each other. Afterwards, the two sides talked a few words randomly. Before leaving, the young Taoist boy only left one sentence, "Who wouldn't dare to be the first in the world?" From beginning to end, I worked hard without asking the other party's origin, and the other party did not explain their identity. After that, Runua Peak began to lively. A young Taoist priest sneaked up to Runua Peak, pretending to be, snorting, and punching all the way, and when he reached the middle of the mountain, his face was flushed and then turned into an iron-blue complexion. He looked like a genuine and pure martial artist, and then pretended to be badly injured, his face pale and shaky, stretched out his hand to cover his mouth, his eyes were white, he fell to the ground and pretended to be dead on the side of the mountain. I really deceived my hard work. When I left the mountain with hard work, I planned to move this stunned green golden statue martial artist to the foot of the mountain. As a result, the other party was struck by a carp. The man in the dragon and phoenix dragon. It was hard to find out afterwards that this person was the third teacher of Bai Yujing, Lu Xin, and he cheeked and stayed there for a while at the top of the mountain. Almost, this guy can talk about everything. It's just a silly talk. In the end, Lu Xin learned that he respected the Taoist ancestor. Before leaving, he also said a mysterious word that was too lazy to delve into it. People are externalized but not internalized. Xuantu Guan Sunhuaizhong also visited Runua Peak. It was relatively congenial. The two sides also made ink together. Dao Chang's son said that the place of cultivation is just two things, how to eat, how to sleep, and how to eat and sleep well. Spiritual practice. Yashing also traveled to Runua Peak. At that time, he was accompanied by a young book boy named Yuanyu. The old man once said that he should be suspicious in his studies, and he should not be suspicious when he is in doubt. Suzy, with a young book boy carrying a bamboo box, and a young girl carrying a large package full of pots and pans, Zhou Yulang, and Dian Sunyang, both were born from the condensing and manifestation of Wenyun. After Suzy, the two came together, Lu Qi from Shiyu Fudi, also known as the Blessed Place, and his best friend Chao Group. Lu Qi entrusted her hard work to take care of one person. She was the only direct disciple who remained in the Qingming world, the young girl Wei Ying. She was also one of the 10 young candidates in the world. It's hard to say that if Wei Ying is in trouble, she can come and hide at Runua Peak, and she won't agree to more. Not long ago, before Su Jun and Chao Gu, there was actually a strange man who was a monk in purple clothes who called himself Zhang Xiu. Fortunately, the hard work has long been a surprise. The monk once sat down this night and only waited for dawn before going down the mountain and leaving. During the period, the barefooted monk only asked an absurd question of hard work. Are you a farmer and native, intending to become a Buddha with anger and supernatural powers? In the end, the purple-clothed monk who wandered here, used his fingers as a pen to engrave the list. Jiang Xiu frankly confessed that it was a slogan for himself, so that he didn't have to worry about his hard work. Only hate peace and nothing, kill the old bald donkey in the mountains. In the unlikely event that the Zen pass is broken, the world will fall for thousands of miles. Lin Jiangxian turned his head and looked at the inscription on the cliff above a stone. The sword was awe-inspiring and faintly bullfighting. However, the engraver set a band similar to the text barrier, and detained that sword intent. In the strokes, to put it simply, these 28 characters are an extremely good sword art, and at the same time, it is also a brilliant formation method that is like a lock sword talisman. A good sword fairy who is good at drawing dungeons for himself. The pure sword repair in the Qingming world, in fact, does not have as much as the Haoran world. After Lin Jiangxian regained his gaze, he smiled and asked, one by one, climbing and descending again, it seems that Renhua Peak, is regarded as a scenic spot for visiting immortals. Doesn't it seem inexplicable? Said hard, it's good to get used to it. Lin Jiangxian nodded and said, indeed, habit becomes natural, and martial arts is also true. Kung Fu is only about memory. The boundless martial artist, the majestic fist spirit conceived, is like a god's shelter. For example, Lin Jiangxian, even if he slept thoroughly anytime and anywhere, he was not afraid of any so-called sneak attack by a martial arts master or a monk in the Ascension realm. A pure martial artist opened his eyes to look at the world, and closed his eyes to sleep like a god. It is the end of martial arts to the first level. Lin Jiangxian suddenly took out a lottery, shook it, and said with a smile, why don't you count it? Help you figure out when to go down the mountain. A look of doubt on his face. A pure martial artist, what's going on with this? Lin Jiangxian explained with a smile, I have nothing to do when I am free. I have seen some Taoist masters' techniques of surviving yang and hiding yin, seeking good fortune and avoiding evil, and learned a little about it. Shaking his head hard, said, I don't believe this very much. Lin Jiangxian picked a nearby piece of rock, sat cross-legged, put the lottery in front of him, smiled and said, if the end is divided into 3 levels, this fortune-telling is similar. The first level, such as watching muddy water, human numerology, is those the subtle hydrology condenses and hides the veins of the water, which can estimate the general trend. On the next level, when you see fish swimming in the muddy water, all beings are alive, and you have a so-called free will. Variables, linking the number of human auras to the fortunes of the heavens and the earth, the key is that people who fish in troubled waters can successfully strip themselves out. The last level is that water will come to the fore. This situation is hard to find, just like the building of the Yufu dynasty on the border of Yongzhou. At the Lotus Temple on the top of the underwater mountains, the Empress Zhu Xian intends to chop the branches of camphor tree branches to investigate the good and bad luck of the 4 states. Regardless of the result, in the future, how to determine whether Zhu Xian's move is fortune-telling or fortune-telling. To tamper with fate. How to determine whether Zhu Xian did this, that all the sentient beings in the 4 states are in the same river of time. After an exhausting silence, he said, Master Lin told me these things. At most, I pretended to be listening. Lin Jiangxian smiled and said, assuming that life is also destined, how can you sigh and be sad? In fact, through hard work, it is certain that Lin Jiangxian is an outsider. It's an intuition, because I don't like the person in front of me because of hard work. But in fact, Lin Jiangxian's reputation in the Qingming world is quite good. The fist is high, has the style of a master, never kills indiscriminately, and is very polite in dealing with people and things. When asked about the fist, it is often clicked, and it is more like a kind of teaching fist and feeding fist without the status of a master or apprentice. And because of hard work, he almost never gets close to or hates anyone. The reason why he rejects this Master Lin from the bottom of his heart is simply that the other party's outsider identity. The previous Confucian Temple Yaxing, Su Zi, Lu Qizhao group, and Renhua Peak had experienced similar uncomfortable feelings after hard work, so it is definitely not my own illusion. I must know that Lin Jiangxian is not a native of the Qingming world, certainly not many. Even Bai Yujing is one of the few. Lin Jiangxian looked towards the Bai Yujing in the center of the world. Yu Dou is in charge of the world, handling affairs within 100 years, the methods are too overbearing, and do not leave the slightest leeway in others. This led to a bad review of Independent Husband, and of course no one dared to publicly declare this. Strangely speaking, even Sun Huaizhong, the Xuantu who regarded praising Bai Yujing as a commonplace meal, never commented on Yu Dou's name, and did not add fuel to the fire. It is said that there was a time when I had a drink with a few old friends in the end, and the old Guanzhu only gave a compromise that was neither praise nor derogation. It was only 3 words, not too much. 3 palms teach Lu Shentai after being lazy. Their little junior brother Shan Qing is now an immortal who has just left the customs, and is far from alone. At that time, the 3,000 Taoist officials in Qingming world rushed to Wucai world, occupying the top of the mountain on the easternmost side, and continuing their respective Taoist lineages. Among them, Bai Yujing occupied nearly half of the seats. Perhaps for the young Taoist disciple of the Taoist named Shan Qing, it was an experience. Whether he could preside over the overall situation, help Bai Yujing gain a firm foothold, and defeat many Taoist officials including Xuandu Guan and Sui Chu Gong. So next, Bai Yujing will be busy. Previously, Wu Zhou appeared in the Yufu dynasty, nominally it was to open up the old dojo. It seemed to be justified, but in fact it was she who stopped Bai Yujing to stop Zhu Xian. Lin Jiangxian smiled knowingly. Obviously, this female crown named Taiyin was with Bai Yujing, or the invincible person, and did not negotiate a certain deal. So, don't provoke a woman, especially a 14th level woman. Build. After hesitating hard, he lifted the flask in his hand and asked, Master Lin, do you want a drink? It is a hard-brewed pine wine. In addition to pine flowers, there are also shelled pine nuts, which are mashed and stored. Drinking this pine wine can moisturize the soul and fat the 5 internal organs, and it is a good way to stay on the face. Lin Jiangxian declined and said, I don't like to drink. Besides, life is drunk without alcohol. I have seen more than 300 autumns, and the temples have stars. Lin Jiangxian was about to leave, put away the lottery, stood up, smiled and invited, in the future, you can go to Ruzhou for a trip down the mountain. Because there are guests here. Hardly said, follow the fate, don't make promises. At this moment, a group of people suddenly appeared. A tall old Taoist priest with 3 long beards and a handsome appearance. The prosperous Dao Qi directly suppressed Renhua Peak's fist, so that the whole body outside the mountain was weak. The water started to make huge waves. Ancient Luobaotan Bixiadong Cave Master, and later Donghaiguan Taoist Master. There are 3 people standing beside the old Taoist, standing together, like a slope. The shortest little Taoist boy, whose real name is Sun Lonling, and the Taoist name is Jinjing, has always been a fire-burning Taoist boy who followed the master of Lao Guan. There is also Yuan Lu, the king of rice thief, and Wu Fu Chigu, who are all willing boys of the Qingshan dynasty. The veteran Taoist said straightforwardly, bring the apprentice who has just received, come here to worship the mountain. Adopting a disciple is like raising a girl. The most important thing is to be strict in and out of, and be cautious in making friends. In the last 100 years, Wang Yuanlu has had few opportunities to go out and hang out. As his only direct disciple, he doesn't have an ascendant realm, and he has the face to wander outside. As for this person with the surname Qi, it's an incidental oil bottle. He has admired you for a long time. He wants to follow him and see Runua Peak's hard work. He is sure whether it is a or a ghost. After hard work, he still didn't get up, but turned a blind eye to the Bixiao cave master and turned a deaf ear to the words of the old Taoist priest. As for those who worship the mountain, the monstrous monks at the top of the mountain, this kind of grotesque words, hard work can only be regarded as wind in the ear. Standing on the rock, Lin Jiangxian smiled calmly, holding a fist and saluting, Yushan Lin Jiangxian, I have seen Bixiao cave master. The old Taoist twisted his beard and smiled, there is a Taoist Chunyang in front, and a Taoist Lin Jiangxian in the back. They all like to go backwards so much. Lin Jiangxian smiled and said nothing. Even if the secret of the secret is leaked by the Bixiao cave master, it does not matter, anyway, the world will know this soon. Wang Yuanlu and Na Runua Peak had one host and one guest, and they fought with each other. Qi Gu was embarrassed. For the martial arts master of the Qingming world, one is to check the quality of the martial arts in the same realm, and the other is to climb the mountain from the foot of the Runua Peak to see how many steps can be taken. After the embarrassment, Qi Gu only felt that following Bixiao cave master to this Runua Peak this time was a real profit, not in vain. He actually saw Lin Jiangxian and the hard-working two in one breath, but it was a pity that Bai O, who had not married before, was not there. The world recognizes that one way of martial arts is one way to go to the dark. The most troublesome thing is short-lived. Qi Gu has several wishes and visions in this life. First, of course, to marry the White Lotus Root as a wife. Of course, Zhu Xian, the female emperor of the Yufu dynasty, is also fine. It's upside down, Qi Gu is not that particular about taboos. I don't need to envy Su Jun of the Great Tide sect anymore. When Qi Gu thought of this, he had to fight with high spirits, and felt that it was a little bit hard to learn boxing. There are many genres of Taoism, each with their legal traditions, and their pedigrees are complex, and their pedigrees are far greater than those of Confucianism and Buddhism. Over the past 10,000 years, there has been a grand occasion of 3,000 side gates and 800 left Taoism in history. It can be said that the left side door is chaotic. If you add in those outside ways that don't flow into the stream, where only supplementation and Fang's Hongshu are used, the knowledge will be greatly improved. Every time Qi Gu heard people talk about Su Jun, he would think of the concubine in the gatehouse, and then think of those men and women fighting. Qi Gu's second wish is to ask Lin Jiangxian about the secret of longevity. As for the questioning box, forget it. No matter how arrogant Qi Gu is, he still knows that the sky is a little thick. Bai O, who is about to kill someone with a punch, can make the martial artist of the same realm not dare to ask her for a punch at all. Lin Jiangxian, however, was able to make the world martial artist not want to question him at all. This gap is actually huge. Runua Peak is hard work, probably somewhere in between. The main thing is that it suffers from never going down the mountain and not actively discussing with others. Qi Gu gathered the sound into a line, and asked Lin Jiangxian in secret, Master Lin, Junior Qi Gu, can I ask you a question? Lin Jiangxian smiled and said, just ask. Qi Gu cautiously said, how do we live to be 300 years old as a pure martial artist? Those ranger novels that I went to street stalls when I was young, the books say heroes, always have big ambitions. As for the heroes, they are often ambitious. But on Kiga's side, speaking of it, he still looks high, walks far, and lives for a long time. According to the world's martial artist Jiazi, Lin Zhongxian is too invincible and doesn't pass too many punches, especially after he kills a young ascendant realm. It will be even more difficult to get out of the phone. It is inevitable that there is a kind of squatting in the pit and not shit. Suspicion. On the contrary, Jiang Zhaomo, the host of Baiyujing Zikolo, almost every jiazi, there will be a question boxing, go to Yashan, Ruzhou, find Lin Zhongxian from martial arts. That's why Sun Daochang gave the Baiyujing Tianxian, who was named Changxiang, a nickname of seeking defeat. If you don't know the truth about Jiang Zhaomo and Lin Zhongxian, every jiazi's questioning boxing, just listen to the nickname. It seems that you will not lose too much, true invincible. Lin Zhongxian smiled and gave the answer, first enter the end, and then go to the level of the gods. During this process, ask people to be careful not to fall into the root of the disease. Some elixir on the mountain can be picked up to nourish. Qi Gu was speechless. This Master Lin, teasing me, saying that doesn't mean not saying it. Lao Guanzhu glanced at Jiang Xiu's inscription on the cliff and smiled. Lin Zhongxian bid farewell and left. The old Guanzhu said in his heart, if we go down the mountain on foot, let's talk about it later. Lin Zhongxian smiled and nodded. After that, the old Guanzhu took the lead to sit on the boulder where he was hard-working. Let Wang Yuanluo not be too restrictive, saying that you and the hardworking are your own family members, and you are too polite to make a difference. I didn't mind the fact that Bixiaodong's master didn't see it. I took out a few pots of home-brewed pine wine, and took some roasted pine nuts and simmered taro to serve the guests. The Taoist priest in cotton robe, like a thin bamboo pole, took out a few pairs of bamboo chopsticks from his sleeves, wiped them under his armpit, and handed them to Qi Gu. Qi Gu became accustomed to it. He took the chopsticks and started drinking. Looking at him, Zaidatong rolled his eyes and did not take down the chopsticks. Wang Yuanyun took a sip of the wine, and the wine was strong enough, and he immediately gave a sharp shot. Lao Guanzhu sneered and said, "You Jimenzi, have you been drinking hemp?" Wang Yuanlu pretended to be deaf and dumb. Even if the two sides have the status of master and apprentice, they don't see how fearful Wang Yuanlu is on the side of the old master. Wang Yuanlu, an old rice thief, and Su Jun, a ghost nicknamed Little Ghost, are both resilient and the most promising. Lao Guanzhu raised his head and squinted at the sky. There was an imperceptible trace, which was the trajectory of Su Jun and De La Chowga. When he raised his eyes, he could see this vein, but it may not be necessary for ordinary monks. The old Taoist turned his gaze, looked at Baiyujing, and sneered. Everyone in the world is scolding Yudo, but they all want to become Yudo. Poor is invincible. There are two places in Baiyujing. They have always been crazy. One is a sutra master who focuses on exegesis, and the other is a heavenly master who watches the stars at night. It is estimated that they are even more crazy now. Acquired astronomy to sleep late at night, moonlight cloud hate starvation. Strongly supporting the old eyes are weak, and still recognize seaway from the horizon. After drinking wine on the side of Renhua Peak, the old master only took a group of people down the mountain and found Lin Zhongxian. The old master joked with his own inner voice, the wind frightened the mountains and the birds, and the clouds fell through the Tianhe River. It is difficult to send home books, and the geese return south again. In the Qijin dynasty of Ruzhou, there was a big river in the territory, and the perennial haze was filled with haze. The old master suddenly asked, "Is there any thoughts after seeing Jiang Xiu's sword intent?" Lin Zhongxian shook his head and said, "I don't have any thoughts. Pan Dao has some feelings, melancholy, everything goes wrong in the world, and the three of them go together and return." About 10,000 years ago, Chen Qing had all joined hands to observe Anlong Jun, and asked about the Battle of Jintuoyuashan. Lin Zhongxian smiled and said, "Senior is insightful and aware of the details." I just hope Senior can help keep this secret. The old Guanju expression played with the taste. You are so sure, Dao Zhu will not tell the two disciples about this matter? Lin Zhongxian asked, even if I said it, what will happen? The master nodded. Looking at the slender dirt road in the mountains, the old master no longer spoke in his heart, and smiled. Someday there are steppes, and mountains are not mountains anymore. A few minutes away, it was the weak water passing by Runhua Peak. If there is no bridge, the water is still water. Wang Yuanlu sighed. Obviously there is an enlightenment behind the words. Qi Gu has always been unable to hear the words of God, Shinto, and Tao, which are the favorites of this kind of worldly masters. Lin Zhongxian said, does Senior have any advice? Old Guanju smiled and said, treasure everything, and cherish it all. Lin Zhongxian nodded, obviously not a cultivator, but displayed the magical powers of the mountains and rivers. The old Guanju stopped and looked into the distance. In ancient times, Tian Xia once divided the sword into 4 veins, which was magnificent. Under this azure underworld, there is the Taoist sword immortal line of Zuanduguan, which has an orderly inheritance and can stand tall. If you add that Zhang Xiu, a monk who is eager to move, with unique swordsmanship and unparalleled in the world, it is said that he once threatened to remove a demon from the world. Now Xiandu Temple has added a Bai Yi who was vast in the world in the past. Hao Su, the last criminal officer of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, is now in the Baiyujing Shenshao city. It seems that 10,000 years ago, the first few sword veins were passed down from the world, and finally on the Qingming world, there seemed to be some kind of mysterious gathering, unity. If Qin Pingan came to Qingming world again in the future, it would be lively. Just to talk about the Qingming world today, whether it is a sword repair or a pure martial artist, as long as they gather together to chat and do something, then there is no way to avoid a young man in the world, whose surname is Qin. Especially the sword repairers here, it's not an exaggeration to say that of the 10 young sword repairers, 9 think they are Qin Yingguan, and 1 thinks Qin Pingan is an old man. Lin Zhongxian returned to Yashan, Ruzhou. In Baiyujing, in the city of Shenshao, criminal officer Hao Su began to retreat and refine his sword. On the border to the south of Ruzhou, in Yingchuan County, a small remote country, in a little-known Taoist temple, a young man who only remembers his name is Chen Tsong, hangs a piece of broken porcelain ornaments around his waist, and has not yet given the urn. Began to formally practice. End of this chapter. Sword of Coming Chapter 956. The Wild World, Jin Suiqing. A pavilion with sharp points on all sides, the plaque, UMA. The sky leaks and the moon is sparse, and the ground wind is mixed. A middle-aged scribe in a blue shirt and long gown wearing a jasper crown gently clenched his fist, holding 2 black and white chess pieces in his hand, creaking. As the cultivator of Jin Suiqing Kaching began to think, inside this pavilion, there was a vision and the weather, but there was not the slightest air of heaven and earth rushing out of the pavilion. First, there was a string of golden words floating up. How about the first sentence, the second sentence, and the third sentence? Soon, because of these dozens of words, there was a thunderous sound in the pavilion. The blue brick ground was like land, and the blue brick pattern was like hydrology, setting off waves. What a secret heart seal of the Buddhism Zen line, do you want to know the wind of my family? On one of the blue bricks that looked like a continent of mountains and rivers, the wind and waves suddenly stopped. In the clear sky, there seemed to be 2 monks as small as mustard seeds climbing up the mountain. I asked the teacher how to teach the pedestrian bird way. What is the bird way without trial? The old monk strode like a meteor, walks like flying, walking on the steep mountain road like walking on the ground, hearing the words, smiling and saying 4 words, not 1 person. On the way to the mountain, the 2 monks met the Daobianya engraved list one by one, all of which had only 1 word, ancestor, yes, pro, general, and Yao. Seeing the words one after the other, without making any pauses, the young monk suddenly asked what he was like. Unexpectedly, the old monk replied, "No bird said." The young monk was silent. The old monk suddenly shouted, "How is it a Buddha?" The young monk slowly replied that the boy Bing Ding came to ask for fire. The old monk said again, "Kind words, Bing Ding belongs to fire, and he seeks fire with fire, but unfortunately it's still not in the end, let's talk about it." The mountain at the feet of the two monks is actually made from hundreds of millions of words in Jing and Su Dao Zhang. Beyond the cliffs of the road mountain, flying birds suddenly cut through the sky and fluttered around the mountain. The green hills began to rotate at the same time. In the end, both the rotating hills and the birds seemed to be still, so it was called the disease of a arrow. When there was no end, the two monks who climbed up without noticing the mountain turned like a bird hanging in the air. Arrow. The young monk was silent, and the old monk sighed, revealing under the eaves. The young monk has a sharp heart for a moment, asking and answering himself, how is he a Buddha? Boy Bing Ding came to ask for fire. The old monk nodded lightly, stomped heavily on the ground, and finally said with a smile, "Mo Lu robbed." After finally trying to understand something, this middle-aged scribe, who has been practicing in Jin Suiching for many years, put more thoughts on the vast sea of Buddhist theory of sutras and laws. Outside the pavilion, the female city lord of Jinsui City, she came slowly. After stopping, she looked for a moment. Because the Sir did not deliberately cover up the scene, she was able to see the strange people in the pavilion, and waited for the Sir. Turning her head and looking at herself, she was very polite and gave a blessing. She smiled and asked softly, "Sir, what is this?" The lord of the city, Qingjia, named Yuanhu, is a female cultivator of the fairyland demon race. She actually owns a robe water refining of the rank of immortal soldiers. It's just that there are no celebrations held in Jin Chui City these years. If so, she would wear this very simple green robe banana leaf with a light makeup. The Jin Suiching Chinka, who was called Mr. by Qing Jiazuan, stood up and smiled and said, "I have nothing to do, just think about it, chat to relieve boredom." The surname was changed, and he was a monk from a foreign country. He has been serving as a guest clerk in Jin Suiching for nearly 100 years. He has lived in simplicity and almost never shows his face. Even Qing Jia's direct disciple never knew that Jin Suiching had such an odd figure. Correction occasionally went out quietly for a long journey, never greeted Qing Jia, and she never asked. Qing Jia said sincerely, "Mister, don't have to care about red tape. The rule of the world is to set the rules for us laymen. Why use Mr. S pedagogy to study nature and humans?" The middle-aged scribe smiled and said, "When you go to the countryside, you can't give up courtesy." Qing Jia sincerely praised, "Mr. Self-Discipline has an autumnal spirit." The middle-aged scribe shook his head and said, "You can be called a gentleman if you are not a scholar who has read a few books." As soon as the husband said, it was actually earlier than the scholars of ancient times, and had a bigger meaning, and it was comparable to the Taoist. Qing Jia always stood obediently at the bottom of the steps of the pavilion, and asked tentatively, "I don't have anything to ask my husband today. Can I sit in the pavilion?" On both shoulders of the female cultivator were a thrush bird and a flower and tree called the Weaver Mother. Privately, Qing Jia always respectfully called the changed pseudonym Mr. without adding a surname. Besides, the real master of Jin Suiching was not her anymore. It's just that the truth that makes Qingjia feel fun rather than fear is that unless she sees the gentleman in the pavilion with her own eyes, all her memories of this person are like being locked in something. Inside the room, as the master, she doesn't have the key. The key is only in the hands of this gentleman. So even she herself didn't know about it, so who could know the truth in the whole barren world? Qing Jia finds it very interesting, just like a young girl who is in love with her, hiding a secret she doesn't want to share with anyone. Being able to use the Tao axion of a fairyland cultivator seems to be completely playing with the applause. I am afraid that even the peak cultivator of the Ascension realm would not dare to say that he can do it. It's incredible. And the female fairy Yuanhu of Jinqiqing is not a soft character, just a fairyland, and no ancestor can rely on. She is not good at fighting by nature, and can protect hundreds of female repairs and repair gold. Cuiqing, you can know that Yuanhu Dao Axion must be extremely tough. The middle-aged scribes did not remove the vision of the pavilion either, and said with a smile, "Of course it's the guest." Hearing this, Qing Jia bit her lip, her eyes that are extremely agile Qiu Shui, both resentful and charming. She climbed up the stairs, picked up the skirt corners, and entered the pavilion. Only when she noticed the vastness of the small pavilion, she cautiously walked around some green bricks on the ground, and finally sat opposite the gentleman. A woman immortal who has moved the world is sitting right now, like facing a teacher in a school. After Qingjia took her seat, she showed a somewhat humiliating look, and laughed at herself. "Mister, just think about it, and the conclusion that we can reach may be the mystery that the dull generations of us can't understand in our entire life." The middle-aged scribe shook his head and said, "The Yuanhu Taoist fellow is ridiculous. The more knowledge a person has, the greater the unknown. The ordinary master lies in knowing what, and the cultivator lies in knowing what he doesn't know." Qingjia was speechless. The middle-aged scribe, sitting upright, smiling warmly, but in front of Qingjia, the other party, is a godlike god. No way, the person in front of him is the mighty city Xingzhong who dared to kill in Tuyu Mountain and could kill casually in Tuyu Mountain. Qingjia wanted to speak but stopped. As she herself said, she didn't intend to talk about business matters, but waited until she entered the pavilion and sat face to face with Xingzhong, as if she didn't say anything, she would feel a little violent. As for the two monks in the pavilion, Xiao Oxiandi, who continue to climb and talk, Qingjia is watching it for nothing, and listening is for nothing. Qingjia forcibly suppressed the thought in his mind and changed the subject, which was also a question that had been curiosity in his mind for a long time. "Dare to ask, mister, what do you think is really interesting?" Xingzhong smiled and said, "A lot. For example, in a blessed place of medium rank, Xingzhong once allowed a certain self to start from scratch, from a weak scholar with no power to bind a chicken, to become a successful assisting emperor to dominate the world in just 20 years. Military division. At the same time, two brand new identities were added, one of which was a reckless Kusano with an excellent martial arts talent, and he rose to the ground. The other one became a gas trainer on the mountain, with a mediocre aptitude for cultivation, and became a political strategist after going down the mountain. Each of the three has a potential main line of thought, leading them to different paths, and they are responsible for three things: creation, destruction, and repair. Xingzhong looked down at the top of the mountain and suddenly said, "Friends of Yuanhu Taoist, it is time to make a long-term plan for Jin Cuiqing." Qingjia was relieved, and said in a deep voice, "I hope you can enlighten me. Jin Cuiqing's situation in the wild world is similar to Zhouquan sect. The foundations of the two Zongzi heads are the refining of the robe and the brewing of the immortal brew. From the outside world, Jin Cuiqing was protected by Yang Ji because he once helped the old throne demon to raise his rank by raising the ink-colored dragon robe by one level. The big demon rarely invades Jinshui City, but it is not the whole fact. Yang Ji does add blue eyes to Qingjia, but he still wants to annex it. As a cornucopia of wealth, the reason why nothing happens is Qingjia. Adhering to his own opinion, even hesitating to say something ruthless, but he didn't have the same knowledge as Qingjia, because he didn't have the same knowledge as Qingjia. Anyway, it was bitter and not worthy of outsiders. Due to the high refining threshold of Jinqiqing's robes, it is difficult to mass-produce it on a large scale. The sects including Jinquiching and Xiandanqing in the previous attack on Haoran City were all used to destroy wealth and eliminate disasters, and gave a large amount of fairy money. And Jin Suiqing also emptied the secret vault to store the 1,000-year-old robes, and delivered them to Jiazizang at a discount. Therefore, no monk appeared on the battlefield on the side of the Great Wall of Jinqi and Jin Suiqing. And the city lord Qing Jia only appeared during the discussion of Tuyue Mountain, and confronted the great monk who had participated in the discussion of the Confucian temple. In fact, at that time, the sight of the female fairy of Jin Suiqing was not a few, of course. It was also because of the refining water robe on her body that divided the yin and yang, had the sun and the moon, and had the aura of the avenue of stars and stars. Xing Juzhong glanced at the female immortal, nodded and said, Tao Ting Taoist fellow's suggestion, the general direction is right. Seeing humanity and checking memory are like flipping through a book. Qing Jia didn't feel any discomfort, but asked, in the opinion of Mr. Jin Suiqing can stand upright for thousands of years because it has two so-called backers, namely Yang Ji in the bright place and the wild peach pavilion in the dark. It's a pity that the old throne big demon stood up and failed to return to the wilderness. It was blocked by Lu Qi and was already imprisoned by the Confucian temple. Tao Ting had also been a watchdog in the 100,000 mountains for many years, and now it is in the Haoran world, and it has changed. Become the tender Taoist who became famous in Yuanyangzu in one fell swoop. Therefore, one of the direct disciples of the great ancestor of Tuyue Mountain, the new makeup of the great demon who is also a female cultivator, had previously asked Jin Suiqing to surrender the secret method and tactics of refining the robes. There is no room for bargaining in Jin Suiqing. In exchange, Tuyue Mountain allowed Jinsui City to choose two places at will to build two xiazongs. For Qingjia, what is the significance of such flashy benefits? It is meaningless at all. Even if Jin Suiqing stood up to the next sect, it could not hold it back. The descendants of Jin Suiqing were all female cultivators. Apart from refining the robes, they didn't know how to fight with others at all. So Tao Ting had previously secretly sent an extremely concealed secret letter. Generally speaking, it is nothing more than implying Qingjia, Xunhua, and others. It's better to move Jinquiching to Haoran world, where you can have a meal and eat together, and both parties can take care of it. Tao Ting slapped his chest in the letter and promised that when he got there, he didn't dare to say that Jin Suiqing would be better. He only said to maintain the current family business and asked the Confucian temple for a clan identity. To Tao Ting, Jin Suiqing Qing Jia is just a little girl who belongs to half of her younger generation. Because if Jin Suiqing goes back to the top, there are two Dao lines, one is similar to the authentic tradition, and the other belongs to the secret transmission of the side door. Tao Ting and Qing Jia, a certain hidden preacher, do have very stories, and they can't be called. It's a bit ugly to say that it's a concubine. And this preacher of Qing Jia who was not included in the genealogy of Jin Suiqing once left a will for Jin Suiqing, saying that in that round of bright moon and bright color, there was an ancient existence of Qing Jia who could call the Supreme Master according to his generation. But when will I see this patriarch? The specific time, maybe, just wait patiently. Qing Jia originally thought that Jin Shui City could have an extra towering backing. As a result, a bright moon in the sky was directly repaired by those swordsmen who were still in the shadows of the Great Wall of Sword Qi. How can she still recognize her ancestors? It's just disappointment and a bit of ease. After all, there is already a Mr. Zheng in Jinsui City who is willing to entrust his life and death. Maybe it was a disaster. The Dai dynasty, in the Aquarius Island battlefield, once raided all the robes from Jinquiching, but unfortunately failed to capture several Jinquicheng's primary monks who were proficient in refining techniques. 300 years ago, the city lord Yuanhu became a fairy. In addition to Yang Ji personally attend the ceremony. Tao Ting also sneaked out of Shirwan Dashin. There is a clear record of this in the secret files of the Summer Palace. Obviously, the Howran world and the Wild world are already in an era-like situation, and wars are likely to break out at any time, and Jin Suiqing, if it is not for Mr. Jing, there is actually no choice at all, either actively relying on Yuishan or being taken by Howran. Break through and become a prisoner. Qingjia found that this gentleman seemed to be absent, and she did not dare to disturb the other's wanderings, and waited patiently for the following. Jing Juzhong quickly came back to his senses, only to say something concise to her. It is nothing more than replacing Tuashin's new makeup with the Zhongta Confucian temple. Jin Suiqing took the initiative to have the price and take root in Fuyao Island, and then in another continent. Similar to Aizhao, choose a site as the next clan. Qingjia obviously had no objection to this, and did not have any look of surprise. The number of wild sects suitable for the Howran soil and water are few, and it happens that Jinquiqing is among them. She cautiously asked, how to move all the properties of Jinquiqing. What about it? Choose a monk. Jing Juzhong said, just follow me. About Imo was worried that the other party would not understand him. Jing Juzhong explained with a smile, the whole Jinsui city has been refined by me to become a life thing. In order to hide from Tuyu Mountain and not show the horse's feet, it will hurt the Taoist friends in Yuanhu. It really took me a lot of time. The reason why Jing Juzhong was distracted just now was because he was thinking about a digression with both parties. And this matter, Jing Juzhong only talked with Cui Yang. The views of the two parties are similar. Under the leadership of the cultivators, the spiritual beings will pave the way and build bridges and go out into the sky. This is a way out visible to the naked eye. The stars out of the sky should be used as bridges, or Zongmen enclaves. As long as the chessboard is big enough, you can break away from the battle of victory and defeat and reduce the internal consumption of the entire established world. It may be led by the human race and sincerely cooperate with the monks of all races to choose a livable place and thrive in those stars outside the sky. However, it is far from enough to have this road through the sky, which is difficult to say for the time being a brand new way or an old way. Just in case, it is necessary to use an unprecedented path to go in. Letting all beings in heaven and earth have another way to live is a retreat that must be planned early. Embroidered Tiger Cui Huang spent his knowledge and finally created a porcelain man, just to stay in the middle with Jing and also to prove this, just in case, terrible accident. The ready-made example is here, you three, it's not easy to ignore it. Jing Juzhong is sure that if the human race neither finds a way out nor finds a way out that is sufficient to protect itself, then sooner or later, it will be destroyed by itself. It's like the gods who used to be aloof, destroying all beings on the earth created by their own hands. Every one of ourselves that we dare not admit. It was a trapped beast in a wandering cage, and is sitting high in the hole. Most of the so-called Taoist scholars do not know the so-called Lijiao to call the ancestors. The root of Lijiao is only to do and what the ancestors ask for. The eyes are not high, and the hands are naturally lower. They are destined to reach out of the curtain. In the pavilion, one was thinking about the life and death of Jin Suiqing. One is considering the life and death of the whole beings with spirits. Probably this is the difference. No wonder Sun Daochang would say with a smile, the gap between people is bigger than the gap between people and pigs. Jing Juzhong waved his sleeves, put away the vision in the pavilion, bent his fingers, and tapped the pavilion pillar lightly. The key to woodwork in the world is mortise and tenon. At-home portal. In a foreign school. Practice in the mountains. What is the link between people's hearts? Jing Juzhong stood up, smiled and said, we are all one lamp, bright and dark between heaven and earth. Words and deeds are mortises and tenons for each other, and the hearts of the people make lights together. Build houses and hold a group for warmth. After that, Jing Juzhong took the lead out of Yueme Pavilion and took Qingjia for a walk in Jinsui City. During the heavy snow season, Jinsui City's palaces were extremely magnificent, as beautiful as the realm of colored glaze. Qingjia, who was following Jing Juzhong, was unable to perform Taoism, so she hid her figure together. In the palace hall, there is a girl with a snake bun, standing on her toes, stretching her waist and holding her hands. The long pole hit the ice, and there was a string of broken jade falling on the ground, and the laughter of the girls was tactfully like Yingyan. Walking out of the palace, Jing Juzhong took Qingjia to a moat outside Jinsui City. The river was wide and the ice was frozen under the bridge. Many children rushed to play on it. Jing Juzhong walked along the river to the upper reaches and came to a riverside dam. His feet were piled up with long and thin stones, densely packed everywhere, and glutinous rice slurry was poured between the stones, and then he was tamped with iron and tannin. Like fish scales layered on top of each other, and like the skinny old man. Jing Juzhong has been curious all these years, how did Qi Jingchen do it in Lizhu Cave, and what did Qi Jingchen see? What really makes Jing Juzhong find interesting is that someone has done something that he still can't do no matter how hard he is. There are big and small things, but in Jingju Center, there is not necessarily a difference between superior and inferior. If a piece of snowflake money on the mountain can only be converted into 100 taels of silver under the mountain, what will the world situation be like? For another example, suddenly all three kinds of fairy money disappeared between heaven and earth. How will the situation develop? I heard that when Cui Yang was young, there was a family elder who was not allowed to read novels about Jianghu romance and genius and beauty. And Cui Yang is not allowed to play chess, because he thinks that smart people are easily obsessed with it, spend a lot of time in vain, delay studying, and do not do business. Qingjia turned her head to look at Mr. Zheng. After a while, she laughed to herself, and boldly asked, "Sir, how do you think about love between men and women?" "Excuse me, does your husband have a favorite girl?" Jing Juzhong smiled and shook his head. Qingjia has never had a Taoist partner in her life, and she doesn't feel that she needs to find a Taoist partner, but she has a very fond of a direct disciple who follows her close friend, a family from De Yaoguan Lane who is a junior. Then shouted a group of familiar female nuns and rode in a very well-established carriage. The Yingying, Yin Yen and Yen Yen, who had their backgrounds, traveled north to the Great Wall of Sword Qi. I saw the young hidden official in the bright red robe, and the chariot was hit by a thunder, so he didn't run in vain. Successfully met the young hermit who was famous all over the world. Make them excited, the same look and feel. Just 2 words, so handsome. After returning to his hometown, Qingjiao's protégé passed on to death, fascinated, as if stunned. Jing Juzhong said with an indifferent expression, "A person of is like holding a torch and walking against the wind, and there is bound to be the risk of burning his hands." Qingjia didn't dare to ask anything more. Jing Juzhong walked slowly. At the tattoo ferry crossing earlier, the other one himself, and Sui Chu Gong Wu Shuangjiang, the two sides did indeed meet. The vast world of Baidi City, the Qingming world, is exempted from the palace. Both are recognized as the two places with the strongest control over the sect, and all the monks respect their respective sect masters like gods. At that time, Jing Juzhong said straightforwardly, "Palace Master Wu shouldn't have come so early." Wu Shuangjiang smiled and said, "Despite the broken Zheng. But since Wu Shuangjiang is still here, it means that Xiuhu has begun to close the net to some extent. Jing Juzhong will shoot once in accordance with the prior agreement." At that time, Wu Shuangjiang was looking at the sky curtain on the Great Wall of Jinqi, dragged a round of bright moon to the Qingming world, and asked casually, "It seems that I can't fight?" Jing Juzhong said, "Because Chen Pingan is still not cruel enough." In the end, Chen Pingan's choice was not too surprising. The 3 heads of Bai Yujing taught Lu Chen and almost died in the hands of a dead person. Under the blue sky, in the center of the sky and the earth, there is a mountain that rises above Runhua Peak. Parting with Lin Zhongxian on the mountain road, the Bixiao cave master only left Chigu, with his direct disciple Wang Yuanlu, who had just come here to worship the mountain, and the fire-burning boy from Jinjing, leaving Runhua Peak together, and went to the simple dojo in the bright moon and bright color. As a ceremony to accept his disciple, the old Taoist took out a palm-sized pocket model of the palace, threw it to Wang Yuanlu, and glanced at the little Taoist boy. This place belongs to Wang Yuanlu, Jinjing. As long as Wang Yuanlu has no opinion, you can do it in the future. Practice alchemy inside. As for the ceremony of apprenticeship, Wang Yuanjin, of course, wished that there would be no red tape on the mountain. Wang Yuanlu took the sacred palace site, of unknown origin, with both hands. It is rare and unusual, beyond doubt. Xiaodaitong obeys the master's decree, and dare not complain. Everyone has his own life. If envy can't come, why envy? Damn, look really greedy. The old Taoist ignored the 2 thoughtful fellows and walked into the house on his own. He just let Jinjing continue to stare at the fire of the stove's pill. By the way, let him teach Wang Yuanlu a recipe for alchemy. How much can he teach? How much you learn depends on your ability. Wang Yuanlu put the precious treasure in his sleeve and pocketed it for safety. Then he asked, Brother Jinjing, what is the origin of this thing? For the sake of that, senior brother, Xiaodaitong rolled his eyes and said, have you heard a word? As a result, after waiting for a long time, without waiting for the following, Wang Yuanjin was completely confused. Xiao Daotong swaggered over the threshold and sat on the bench beside the furnace. He smiled and said, there is an old saying, Long Qianlu is a puddle, and fire helps the Sun Palace. You know. Wang Yuanlu squatted aside, shook his head and said, I have never heard of it. Xiaodaitong sneered and said, the frog at the bottom of the well. Wang Yuanlu smiled and didn't refute it. It's hard to say who is the frog at the bottom of the well. Xiao Daotong continued, according to legend, it is one of the 5 highest in ancient times. Speaking of this, Xiao Daotong hurriedly stopped talking and pointed his finger at the ceiling, that Lushwaiking is the summer palace of the ancient water god, it can only be regarded as one of them. But this Sun Palace, whose territory is it? You guess it, it's a higher rank than that of Lushwaiking. According to legend, it was once one of the sword-making grounds. The monks outside knew what it was, they would only use false transmissions and false transmissions. They were all said to be broken, but they were actually there. My master is laying it here. It's a very good baby. It can be ranked in the top 5 possessions of my master. If you succeed in it, let's steal it. Wang Yuanlu said with emotion, Brother Jinjing knows so much. Xiao Daotong stared at the flames of the pill furnace, his immature face was shining brightly by the firelight, he curled his lips and said, there is a fart. Wang Yuanlu held sleeves with both hands and whispered softly, it's much better than using nothing. Xiaodaitong was furious when he heard the words, mistakenly thinking that the other party was saying something strange and mocking himself, but when he turned his head, he saw a sad and sincere face. Qingming World, Ganzhou, Sui Chu Gong. 4 people meet for a drink in the viewing pavilion of the highest palace in the mountain. They are now circulating a booklet written by the palace lord, in small letters, detailing the customs of the colorful world. Here, you can see the crane tower, and the mainstay in the middle of the river outside the crane tower, which is actually a piece of Shillong stone. A few of them are the old people of Crane Inn. In the past, an unknown Crane Inn was opened on the inverted mountain in the Howran world for 200 to 300 years. A small inn, hidden dragons and crouching tigers, 1 soars 2 immortals, plus 2 jade puddings. In addition to the young shopkeepers, the foreign cooks and handymen, all with pseudonyms, all have their surnames Nian, and they all travel far and wide in the awe-inspiring world. Among them, the maiden, who has the pseudonym New Year, is the daughter of the palace lord Wu Shuangjiang. And that young shopkeeper was Bai Luo, who was nicknamed Xiao Bai by Wu Shuangjiang. Sui Chu Gong is the second-in-chief who has full authority to handle general affairs. At this moment, except for the old guard Bailu, the other four are all here. The fairy Zhang Yuanbue in the Daohao cave, a white-haired old man with a rosacea nose, gently tossed the booklet that had been turned over to the couple who were flirting and cursing at the next door. In his spare time, he has nothing to do in his spare time. If he gives this old man a pot of wine and a plate of wine and dishes, he can drink for a whole day. It's like taking a sip of wine from a bowl and vomiting a large sip back into the bowl. 3 axes at the wine table, sipped a sip, squinted intoxicated, and shivered. In the past, Zhang Yuanba's dojo was on the Shilong Stone. Later, when a sword repairer came to Qingquan, Zhang Yuanbue took the initiative to move the site, without having to discuss matters in the Patriarch Hall. If such trivial matters need to be determined by the palace lord, it is passed on. Go out without being laughed off by outsiders. The monarch on the mountain reached out to catch the booklet, with a serious look, turning the book like flying. The pages of the book clashed. Although he read quickly, he did not dare to miss a word. After all, it was written by the palace lord. At that time, the 3,000 Taoists under the Qingming world entered the Wucai world. Nominally, Baiyujing has only 1,000 people, half the distance, and more than 400 people short of it. But in fact, Baiyujing's Tianjun immortal officials are not a small minority, and they are inextricably linked. Actually, Baiyujing's Taoist officials still account for almost half of the quota. This man's mountain Taoist couple named Xia Chuantiao, the woman is strong in figure, and her appearance is really very unfair. She likes to drink strong wine and talk horrible things. Xia Chuantiao don't have a bamboo hairpin and drank silently. As for the Taoist companion around him, he likes to be awkward, and is simply reincarnated. For a cultivator, that kind of bed fight has a fart meaning, but since it is a Taoist companion, let him toss it as he pleases. The man handed the book to the Taoist companion next to him, and did not forget to gently squeeze the woman's greasy wrist, but Xia Chuantiao took the book with one hand, and fell on the other's head with the other hand. The man almost beat him to the spot. Turn in circles. Zhang Yuanbue frowned and said, "How come at this juncture, 7 or 8 years earlier than expected, suddenly a list of 10 people in the world popped up?" Yu Hao laughed and said, "You can toss as much as you love. Anyway, I'm not on the list, so it doesn't matter to me." While reading the book, Xia Chuantiao said, "The key is that the Xianzhang faction stated that this list is not theirs at all, which is very mysterious. The maiden, who has the pseudonym of New Year's window grill, as Wu Shuangjiang's prostitute, her real name is Wu Yu. It's just that this name seems to suffer a bit. Because the homophony is not particularly beautiful, filthy, misunderstanding, no regrets. At the time when the yin and God came out of their body, they traveled far and wide, and they spanned 2 worlds. They were not complete souls. Both the real body and the young God stayed in Sui Chu Gong. Of course, it was protected by the palace lord Wu Shuangjiang with a certain secret method, otherwise, with their realm, the yin gods would not be able to stay that long on the side of the hanging mountain, and they could continue to practice. A small and exquisite rattle is hung from the waist of the young woman, with a painted drum surface, complicated paintings, stitched with dragon skin, and a peach wood handle with a red-lined glazed orb. With the girl's cultivation base, it is another treasure that was refined by her to be her destiny, which can't be completely concealed. From this, it can be seen that this snare drum is not only a treasure of immortal soldiers, but also among the immortal soldiers. are destined to be superior. Every year on New Year's Eve in the Sui Show Palace, there is the old custom of burning lamps and candles, and drumming to expel the ghosts of the epidemic. It is Wu Yu who is responsible for these two things. When Wu Yu was at the Crane Inn, he used the pseudonym New Year's Window. It was because when she was young, once she kept up with her father. Wu Shuangjiang likes to read miscellaneous books, and especially likes to read the notes of literati who have anecdotes. Wu Yu once heard his father say a sentence in a book. The people in the window write decals on the window paper, and the appearance of the window is very good. It may have been seen in a book, or it may have been sent out of feelings, who knows? Wu Yu said, looking back, I will ask my father. Yu Yan shook his head quickly. Wu Yu, restraint, be restrained, don't hinder us from being trained on the palace lord's side. Over the past 300 years, there have been 10 people in the Qingming world, with minimal changes, almost all of them old people. Bai Yujing occupied the top 3 seats without any disagreement. The chief master teaches Ko's name, the second master teaches Yudo, and the third master teaches Lu Qin. Fourth, it is the old man, the head of Huayang Palace in Lung Mountain, Gao Gu with the road name Juyue. Fifth, Xian Du Guan Sun Huaizhong. Sixth, Yishan Lin Jiangxian is the only pure martial artist on the list. The next few were all old faces with names and names. The others are like Sui Chu Gong Wu Shuangjiang, the female ancestor of the 2 Jingshan mountains, and the Taoist song, Overlooking, because they have been in retreat for too long and have been commented, and they have all withdrawn from the list of the 10 people in the world. As for our continent, the years of retreat have been longer, and the crown of the prostitute with the name Taiyin was almost completely forgotten by Qingming world. Regarding the past 10 people in the world, except for 4, the various rankings are still considered to be controversial among the spectators. Of course, these 4 are 3 Bai Yujing head teachers, plus a Xuanta master Sun Dao Chang. But this time, I don't know who made the list, the latest 10 people in the world. Full of mystery, even a kind of undercurrent. Murderous. The person at the top of the list is Bai Yujing, the second head teacher Yudo. Second, the 3 masters of Bai Yujing, the lord of Nanhua City, Lu Xin. Third, the dojo is temporarily located in the Bixiao Cave Master among the bright moon and bright colors. Fourth, the ancestral home of Yongzhou, casual cultivator, refining master, female champion Wuzhou. Fifth, Qizhou, Xuandu observes the Lord, Sun Huaizhong. Sixth, Ruzhou, Qi Jin Dynasty, Yishan Linjiangxian. The first person in martial arts in the world. Seventh, Su Gong Wu Shuangjiang. Eighth, Yuzhou, Daifishan Huayang Palace, Gaogu. The world's first alchemy master. Ninth, Binzhou, Qingshan Dynasty, Yaxiang Yaoqing. 10th, the 2 are tied together. The female crown of Xuandu Guandao, Kongshan, Wang Sunday Runhua Peak is a pure martial artist, hard work. There are 10 alternates. But compared to the top 10, the spectators can't afford much interest. First of all, in this list of 10 people, there is no such thing as the leader of Bai Yujing. This is enough shocking news, and it is not an exaggeration to say that it is a bolt from the blue. Secondly, Wuzhou's re-emergence is equivalent to her 14 realms. She squeezed out Gao Gu's position. It is not surprising, but why Gao Gu did not follow closely? The 5th person has really become an iron law in the Qingming world. Or is it? Sun Guanju has actually also been among the 14th realms. Xian Du Guan is a line of sword immortals in Dao's sect, but Sun Huaizhong is that, the 14th realm of pure sword repair. In addition to Dao Chang's son, there is now one more senior sister and grandson in Zuandugwen, but who has no idea about the grievances between Zuandugwen and Bai Yujing. Is it possible? Xia Chuantiao just returned the book to Wu Yu, who shook his head and said, "You keep it." Zhang Yuanbo remembered something, squeezed his chin, and said in doubt, Ms. Gue temporarily regretted that she didn't come to the Qingming world with us. Did she notice something wrong here? Yu Hao thought of the graceful Mrs. Gue, and his wife's auntie, but with a completely different charm, the man couldn't help but laughed. As a result, he immediately suffered an elbow from Xia Chuantiao, making the man sweat on the forehead. Xia Chuantiao sighed for no reason. I still can't believe that young man can become a hermit and can also engrave on the head of the city. The clear eyes of the young man with the sword back then are really impressive. The former sword-backed youth, and later the last hermit, became the patron of the inn. I visited the upside-down mountain twice and stayed at the Crane Inn at the end of the alley. Zhang Yuanbo smiled and nodded, and glanced at Wu Yu. I think Dong Huafu, it's good to watch. Wu Yu just pretended not to hear the implication. Back in the days when Upside-Down Mountain returned to Qingming, Dong Huafu and Yan Zhuo followed Qin Quan to the Sui Chu Palace, and they browsed the Sui Chu Palace together. During the period, they encountered the girl film with the horns and lights. They were successful in cultivation, and they looked at their young age, and talked to them in a weird manner. It's a pity that I ran into Patriarch. Wu Yu really couldn't scold that Dong Haitan. The most afraid of a quarrel is that you don't understand what the other person is talking about. Fortunately, neither side did it, but had an appointment. She thinks that the two foreigners are not high in realm, and they are also guests of Sui Chu Gong, so she has no common knowledge with them. But so far Wu Yu still doesn't know that it was the arrangement made by Dong Huafu to help Chen Ping'an, and it has nothing to do with Dong Huafu. On Shilong Rock, Wu Shuangjiang came here in person. Wu Shuangjiang chatted with the young-looking Nailan Xiaowei about spiritual practice, and in the end only Qin Quan was left, walking with the palace lord along the river. As the 16 leaders of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, the old Yuaning Qin Quan, carried a sword box wrapped in cotton cloth, and contained a natal lamp for Nailan to burn the reeds. Qin Quan joined the Zhushitang Mountain and Water genealogy of Sui Chu Gong, but he didn't give it to him, and he never received an official Taoism. This means that Lao Jianqiu is not yet a Taoist official. The dragon stone at the feet of both parties should have migrated with the water and would not take root somewhere for long. However, Wu Shuangjiang personally imposed several restrictions and was forcibly detained here. In fact, apart from the value of the Shilong stone itself, Wu Shuangjiang's move is very uneconomical. It is a loss-making business. If it is left in other sects and Taoist temples, a circular river channel may be dug and a Shilong stone that drifts with the flow. It is a long-standing benefit that can continue to add water transportation. It's just that Sui Chu Gong has a profound background, and Wu Shuangjiang's violent act of heaven and earth is too much, not bad. In history, there are 4 Shilong stones. One was completely shattered in the battle between water and fire, one was later refined by an ancient immortal, and the other was once seen by Mrs. Tan Tan and Lu Shui Kang. For the forbidden boulder in the sea. Finally, it is the dojo of Sui Chu Gong. Rumors are only rumors. The Taoist couple of the former palace lord Wu Shuangjiang, she had mediocre cultivating skills and liked to collect rare treasures in the world. Wu Shuangjiang took her to travel around the world, and all her favorite things would be brought back to Sui Chu Gong by Wu Shuangjiang. After learning about the series of deeds, Qin Quan asked tentatively, Palace Master Wu, are there any landscape paintings? Can I watch one or two? Wu Shuangjiang stopped, and in the river outside Xialongxi, water mist rose up. The river water was like a mirror, and in that picture of water patterns, I saw a mad female cultivator who laughed wildly and raised one. She patted her head with a rotten arm that fell like ashes. Lost and mad, threatened to kill the young hidden official as if it were an extra battle, but she actually asked the young hidden official to be the culprit and defeat Tuyueshin. Then there was a golden thunder and lightning, beating the body of the fairyland female cultivator into powder. Because the picture scroll was pinched to the end, Qing Quan looked at a loss. This is what happened. As for the great demon of the fairyland, Qing Quan certainly recognized the other party. The female monk's name was Fanlu, and he was once the lord of a sect in the wild world. It seems that she can only rely on a life-saving lamp to break a part of her soul, and then go to borrow the corpse to restore the soul, but this is the most inferior corpse. After all, the monster monk is far more than the human trainer. Pay attention to the real body. Many magic techniques and the fundamentals of great avenues are all related to the true body and soul. Therefore, the number of demon cultivators fell far more than the human cultivators. What's more, even if you can start all over again, it is no longer difficult to follow the old path of previous life practice. Since you can't familiarize yourself with the old path, how can you practice smoothly in the future? Therefore, for any sect in the barren world, every time the Zushitang enshrines a lamp of renewal, it is almost a business that is doomed to lose money. Even if it was the sect master, even if he could rely on the life renewal lamp, the following would often be a change of dynasty without any suspense. Although Qing Quan couldn't figure out the joints, he didn't delay Lao Jiangxi's smile. Being beheaded at Tuiyue Mountain is like being hacked to death by a Taoist official in Bai Yujing, when a Confucian monk was beaten to death by an outsider in the Middle-earth Confucian temple. Have a good time. Our hidden officer, indeed, as always, Liangxiang Ziyu. Wu Shuangjiang smiled and said, "It is true that Fanlu is upright, fighting with the young hermit, she won't die so badly. It's just that the battle of Tuiyue Mountain is too treacherous, just like the disciple of Tuiyue Mountain's ancestor, the culprit, teamed up with Qin Pingan and eliminated their cultivators of the 5 realms of the wilderness who had stayed in Tuiyue Mountain as a guest." Qing Quan said in shock, "This dial. Not just the old witch Fanlu." Wu Shuangjiang nodded and said, "More." Old Jianxiu laughed loudly. "It's worth noting that I quarreled with Master Hermit and didn't fight back." Wu Shuangjiang laughed off. Old Jianxiu was full of emotion. "This hermit, sir, really never disappoints." Wu Shuangjiang suddenly smiled and asked, "Qing Quan, who do you hate most in your life?" Qing Quan was silent. "Of course I hate a lot, just say those monsters beasts, can you count them?" But the person Qing Quan hates most is actually himself. Hate the sparse swordsmanship in this life. I hate myself for being timid, even Dong Sangyang and Qi Tingji dare to scold them. As for the old deaf children, they are not worthy of Qing Quan to waste their saliva, but such a number 1 sword repairer, in this life, they dare not even say the word they like. Some things will not wait for others. Some people do not wait for others. Qing Quan looked sad. Wu Shuangjiang said, "Sword Xiu Huiting of the Red Leaf Sword Sept, surely you remember." Qing Quan's eyes instantly sharpened. Qing Quan and his best friend Xiao Gufeng once had a private agreement that next time Huiting will appear at the Great Wall of Jinqi, if Huiting can no longer be sacked, both parties will be dumb in the future. It's a pity that Huiting had broken that fate-flying sword, Fat Powder, on the battlefield 100 years ago. After falling, he recovered from his wounds in the sect and did not participate in the final battle. Wu Shuangjiang said, "There is another picture scroll, let's see for yourself." It turned out to be to slay the Red Leaf Sword Sect's Yuaning Realm Sword Xiu Huiting. Chen Pingan let go of a monk from the fairyland demon race. Of course, the latter's fatality was also severely injured after the Battle of Tuiyue Mountain. Huiting chose to trade life for a demon clan fairy who had never been to the Great Wall of Jinqi in exchange for a way out. On that battlefield, the sword light fell straight first, smashing the Huiting head down, and everything was 2 on the spot. Then an unparalleled sword light swept across and cut it off. Then use a suspended mind board to slowly refine the monk's soul with 5 thunders. The most terrifying thing is that in the bright thunderboard with endless rhyme, 2 golden texts that have been forcibly stripped out appeared, which are the real names of Hui Ting's monster race. A brutal killing that can make the backs of bystanders chill and creepy. The Great Wall of Sword Qi is full of wars, and there is a tragic picture on the battlefield, with endless cruel methods. Just say Miyu, Nalan Saihuan, Qi Shou, these sword repairs, in the eyes of the wild monsters, are they good things? And the reason why this picture scroll is so uncomfortable is because the person who shot it is Qin Pingan. But Qing Quan is definitely an exception. There will never be anything wrong. Wu Shuangjiang put away the secret method, and the scroll disappeared with the water. If life is impermanent, Ping Zong is uncertain. Wu Shuangjiang went to the crane tower. Lao Jianshou thanked Palace Master Wu, and then walked alone by the river, with a relaxed expression and a free smile. It was an act done by the hidden officer. On the wall of the past years, during the fighting side by side, he couldn't scold the young hermit. As soon as the old man turned around, it seemed that he had not had time to suppress his smile, and suddenly he was already crying. Accidentally. Inside the crane tower. Wu Shuangjiang gradually ascended to the top floor, the door opened by itself, and he walked into a room. In the history of Qingming world, Sui Chu Gong had always been a barely second-rate sect until Wu Shuangjiang appeared, and he lifted Sui Chu Gong to the top sect in the world entirely by his own power. Except for Wu Shuangjiang's own high attainments in Taoism, it can be said that the bottleneck of each realm is as nothing, but what Wu Shuangjiang really makes the world's monk sphere lies in his unique ability in preaching and teaching karma. Therefore, Wu Shuangjiang is notorious for saying nothing in the palace. Inside the house, in addition to Bai Luo, who is the watchman, there is also a Taoist and literary official, Gao Ping. In addition, there are still 3 people. One was just looking at a Taoist official who was about the same age as Gao Ping. His face in his weak crown was extremely heroic. He was named Huan Jing and his Taoist name was Wu Hao. There was also an old man with the nickname Big Talking Talent in private, and his pseudonym was Chong Yu. He didn't flinch when he saw the Suisher Palace Master who had crossed the threshold. The last one is a ghost with insufficiency. His surname is Yang, but he has long since left the sect and family. He has been in retreat in Sui Chu Gong for many years. This is the first time he has left the dojo. Wu Shuangjiang was the first to sit cross-legged and smiled and said, "You are welcome." Outside the crane tower, the clouds and water are long, and we are in the same sorrow with you. In the crane tower, there are heroes of soldiers, who can sit together. Some people seem to exist only in books. Then some people seem to have come out of the book. And this book is called Wu Temple. How in the world, Tonggi's Hao, Zhenyao Lu. The vision of heaven and earth that the mountains and rivers and gods admired the incense together gradually disappeared. Among them, 1 scented water incense and 1 scented mountain were from the old man of Shijianhu, who acted as the imitating Bai Yujing, and the pure young Taoist Lu Yan. Since I have made a decision on the merits that those senior brothers left you, I have to remind you. The Holy Master smiled and joked, the merits are dissipated. It is out of selfishness. There is no return. Don't take a fluke. Chen Pingan nodded. Aside from anything else, Chen Pingan sacrificed the Xiaofingdu, that was not part of his life-flying sword. The most sage master didn't feel surprised. A young man who couldn't even smash Dao Axian with embroidered tigers, his brain was bright, not surprising. It's just that he didn't rush to make a move. The most sage master asked with a smile for no reason, a cultivator doesn't have a Dao name yet, isn't it? When Chen Pingan rarely smiles and is embarrassed, he can't be on the side of the most holy master and say that he is very good at naming him, because there are too many candidates for the road number. But he doesn't know how to choose, right? The Holy Master asked again, I will go to the Qingming world in the future, do you think about your pseudonym? Chen Pingan was stunned, shook his head, I haven't thought about it yet. There are a lot of pseudonyms, such as Chen Haoren from Luzhou in Beiju, Chao Amo from Tonggishao, and Do Yi from Wutsai World. As for Qingming Tianxia, there is it. But the most sacred master smiled and said, "It's good to know it by yourself, don't need to tell me, so as not to reveal the secret." Then the most sacred master stretched out his hand and twisted the flying sword with 2 fingers. There was no need for Qing Tong to open the restraint of the town demon building. He just threw the flying sword lightly outside the town demon building and turned it into a slender strip. Lu Ying went away thousands of miles in an instant, disappearing in the night. Suddenly, as countless stars are gradually falling into the wilderness of the world, the lights are brilliant, on the earth, they light up one by one, and gradually become dense, as if there are those tens of trillions, shining and shining, uncountable. In the ruined city, in the wilderness, if the fluorescent light is dotted, it is trance like a lone traveler with a light, and there are people who seem to be partners and carry double lights, all are the dead and no burial place, can only wander in the lonely soul-field ghosts, there are densely lit places, the broken mountains and rivers of Tonggishao, no one collects the waste accounts, and the remnants of the broken flags are returned to the horses. The ruins of large and small battlefields, in the continuous dilapidated city, are complex. The queen still has no time to do the water and land puja, the dead soul that cannot be memorialized, but the yin spirits gather, and the obsession is deep. After death, they still hope to protect the heroic spirits of the mountains and rivers. The widows are immersed into rivers, although the fire is slightly capable of burning wild. The lights are dazzling everywhere, like pedestrians on the road, and they have to go their separate ways. In the many government offices and private academies, it seems that there is a sound of books, such as reading lights at night, and they are faintly lighted like people crossing the river, or rushing in the wind. Or he hesitated, and looked back, there is the city and countryside, with few lights, if the lights are shining in the cold window, and the lights meet on the road, stopping like an old man. There are places where Taiping Mountain, Fuzhong, Yuzigang and other sects were destroyed. It seems that there are lights, as if monks are rising from the wind, bringing bursts of fluorescent light in the dark night, and there are lights in all parts of the continent. High, like a couple, life and death, they are reluctant to part, and there are those high and low gaps. It is almost the adults holding the hands of their children, as if the parents are bowing their heads to comfort the children, not afraid, parents are by their side. The holy master turned his head and looked at the Qing Shan guest beside him. The young man who had been looking into the distance silently before, when he saw the last scene, his eyes were hazy with tears, his lips trembled, and his face was wrinkled vigorously. The most sage master waited quietly for the young people around him, picking up his emotions bit by bit. The young man turned his head, took a few deep breaths, then turned his head back, and silently thanked the most holy master. The old man turned to his side and bowed his hands in return. Look at the time, the new year is coming soon. So when Chen Pingon straightened up and got up, he realized that he was no longer in the demon tower of Tonggishao town, but to return to the top of Dayue Sui mountain. It is rumored that in ancient times, there was a solar term courtyard in Suishan, in which there was a drum for spring festival. Ringing this drum is to say goodbye to the old and welcome the new in the world, and to celebrate the spring of the world. But for some reason, no one has beaten a drum to welcome the spring festival in Suishan for too many years. Chen Pingon, who was on the high platform of the Solar Terms Academy, stared at the giant primrose drum in a daze, and took a deep breath. Chen Pingon began to beat the drums. Sound the primal drum, and the world welcomes the spring. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.